feel so nervous. Hey, it's Romania Black, and this feels surreal. We're here. We're watching the final part one of the final installment of Attack on Titan. I'm splitting it into 2 videos because I'm not that crazy. But this feels weird. This doesn't feel... It feels surreal. I shouldn't be here, right? I've been waiting for this moment and building up to this moment for the last 7 months, literally, for about the last year. I went back. My concept of time with Attack on Titan is so skewed. I literally started this series in the summer of 2021. And then in 2020, like went through 2021, right? Is that correct? And then went all the way through 2022. And then, yeah, the summer of 2022, I finished the anime and was like, okay, well, we're going to do Junior High, Attack on Titan Junior High, and wait for the final parts to come out. And then they were delaying the final parts. And so in the fall of 2022, I started with the manga volume 1, and then I was like, well, my fear was, I thought I was, if I started in the fall of last year, a year ago, my fear was that I wouldn't catch up, or I'd catch up too quickly and the final parts of the anime wouldn't be out. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait a little bit and see if we get any headway. And then we found out that in this last March or April, that was when, over the summer, I guess they decided to announce it, that the final part 1 would come out and then part 2 would be in the fall. Yeah, because originally it was going to be the whole thing was going to come out in April. And I was like, well, I'll start the manga in fall of 2022 and be done by the time it came out in April. And then they delayed it. And I was like, well, then I'm just going to, make it kind of pace myself a little bit. So yeah, I haven't watched the anime since the summer of 2022. So it's been a year and almost a year and a half. And it just feels, my concept of time with Attack on Titan is so skewed, and I'm sure you all that have been reading the manga for 10 plus years kind of had that same feeling. So this feels weird. Yeah, but here we are. I had some people tell me in the comments, and the moderators and I, we talked about on Discord as well, the moderators and everything, about the concept that they've spaced this out into, like, they've kind of done like what they did with Mugen Train with Demon Slayer. They had a movie come out and then they split the movie into episodes for a season. And I did contemplate watching it in episode format, but I'm too impatient. I'm like, at this point, I want to see it all in a full-length version as it was probably meant to be. Yes, I don't know how long the discussion will be. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning, so, I've kind of like planned my whole day out because I don't know how long this discussion's going to be. So my plan is, if you're curious, I'm going to watch today's, the hour-long special, dear God, the hour-long special we're going to watch and then talk about it. And then next week is going to be the second installment, which is even longer, so I've heard. And go with that. And do that. And then from there, basically... after that, we'll do the manga volumes 33, 34, and then sometime in December, my goal is by the end of the year, I want to get the recap review and RIP. Who knows how long that will be? I don't even want to think about it. I'm going to have to probably do like installments of that one because it's going to probably be so long. Who knows? I say that, but you never know, right? Now, one thing before we start for the comments. Obviously, there's been people talk about like some kind of extra chapter or something. I've not looked into it because I don't want to be spoiled. That is like one of my biggest pet peeves. I'm like, I don't want to know, while I am watching the series, I don't want to know if there are extra volumes, extra chapters, if the manga ends. I don't want to know that shit until I am done with the series. When I'm done, then you can be like, oh, hey, Romania, by the way, there's an extra chapter you can react to. And I'll be like, awesome, cool, thank you. Cool, you're best. But until then, I don't want to know because I don't want it to influence my experience watching the show, right? So don't do that. Please. You would think that'd be common sense, but a lot of people do not understand that. They've been trying to tell me about some kind of extra chapter. I don't want to know, damn it. So please stop. Or mods, don't let me read that shit. So yeah. That's where I'm at. But yeah, I haven't looked at the comments for volumes 31 or 32. I feel like when I go back to the manga, I'll address those comments then after I've watched both parts. And I've kind of told the moderators that as well. So I don't have a lot of comments, but I'm so grateful though. I say that about the manga comment. I say that, but I am so utterly grateful to you all for not spoiling me about this anime. I have been blessed by not being spoiled on social media. I've like muted as much as I can, and I stay off. I don't look up anything Attack on Titan related on YouTube for fear that it will generate the algorithm. I stay as away from that shit as possible. And so I have been blessed in the 2.5 years that I've been, reading and watching Attack on Titan. I have not been spoiled to this part of the story. I have no freaking clue what's coming. I don't know. I don't have an idea. I've only had my theories I've talked to you all about, but that's it. That's all I got. So I have been super lucky, thanks to you all and thanks to the moderators, that I've not been spoiled. So thank you all so much, because I'm walking into this blind, y'all. Not a clue. Not a clue. It's in 2 parts. That's all I know. So yeah, I've got my coffee. I have a feeling this is going to be refilled by the time I finish this. And we're going to talk about it. So I'm hoping my dogs are fine. They've had breakfast too. They should be fine, but you know how it goes. I just thank you all so much. I hope you all enjoy this reaction, and we'll talk about the discussion afterwards. But where do we go to? I know where we left off from volume 32. Eren's destroying the world, and our crew is headed to this little offshore off of Marley to try to hook up the plane so they can go find Eren. And at this point, the crazy thing is, they don't want to fight Eren. They don't want to destroy Eren. They don't think that they can. They don't think that it matters. They just want to talk to him and be like, hey, maybe don't destroy the rest of the world. Maybe just stop at Marley and just end it there, right? Maybe just end it there with those Eldians. So yeah, that's all I got. So I'm going to give Hug this, tell him to go lay down. No more. He probably won't listen. He's an Aries like Eren, so he has to have his way. And we're not going to waste any more time. So I do want to give one special shout out before we start, though, and that goes to Dragon Acolyte. I hope I said that right. Dragon Acolyte. I was so afraid when if people were talking in the Discord about this coming out in Crunchyroll and crashing Crunchyroll, and I was like, and my internet's kind of spotty as it is, and so I've been terrified this entire time. I'm like, if I watch an hour-long special, is it gonna lag? Is it gonna stop? And Dragon Acolyte was super awesome, and they were like, hey, I'll just get the file for you, and if you want to watch the file and download it, that'd be great. And I was like, you are a lifesaver. So, Dragon Acolyte, thank you so much. This is amazing. I'm so glad I can just watch this and not be interrupted. Mwah. Just all of my love. Seriously. You all are so kind, and I don't deserve it. So, but yeah, we're not going to waste any more time. I've talked for 7 minutes. I'm just delaying the inevitable at this point. Those of you that are asking about the OP and ED, I don't know if there's an OP and ED with these because they are so, because they're just a film. If there's an OP and ED, I will watch them at the end of the series. At the end of the movies, I'll react to the OP and ED. It might be better that way anyway, because I can get a full context of the series before I watch them. So, we'll just see. But we're not going to waste any more time, y'all. We are going to dive into, I guess, episode 29. Attack on Titan, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and turn my sound up, and let's go. I don't know how long this discussion will be. We gotta go through this. We've got to go through this episode. It was kind of like 2 in 1. Oddly enough, I may be pleasantly surprised as we go through. I don't think the discussion for this, I say this to you now, but it may be like 2 hours from now. You're like, oh, great Romania. I don't think the discussion for this is going to be as long as I think it is, but it might be. We're going to break down this episode and talk about it, but basically, Isayama, I applaud you for doubling down on Eren being a villain. I'm glad we've gone that route, because villain he is. And I'm going to forewarn you all. A couple things before we start this. One, I have not seen the last part yet. Probably going to watch that tomorrow. I'm going to be honest, because I don't want to be spoiled. Probably, and because I'm so fired up, I'm like, I want to see it. I'm probably going to watch it tomorrow if I can, if I get time, because I want to know. But I haven't seen the last part of it yet. I haven't seen Full Circle. So again, we're going to speculate a lot of things on Whiteboard Kun here throughout this episode. Obviously, Isayama has been very good in this series about making you have a knee-jerk reaction about a character and about a decision made, and then later on, you have this knee-jerk reaction like I have with Eren and my frustrations with him in this episode set. And then Isayama may do something in the final rounds of this series that make me go, oh, well, you know what? Now it's come full circle. I understand. But that's number one. So number one, I am fully transparent and aware that my feelings about Eren's decisions and things, once we have the full picture in the final part, may make me go, oh, well, that all makes sense now. However, the second part of this is that I am not happy with Eren with this. And my thing of it is, Eren has never been a character I've particularly liked. I've loved the writing of Eren. And again, in this episode, I appreciate Isayama doubling down and saying, no, Eren is a villain. He is the antagonist. He is the darkness within all of us that we really don't want to acknowledge is there, but we usually overcome. What if that darkness like just manifested itself, right? And that's Eren. And so I applaud Isayama because I do believe that in this episode set, they're like, no, Eren is the villain. We've wanted to sympathize with him because he's been our friend this whole time, but we need to face facts that Eren is doing things that are horrifying. And Eren is fine with doing these horrifying things for a lot of interesting reasons. And so my fear is that there's going to be a lot of people come for me in the comments being like, Eren's this martyr and savior. God, no. Eren's the villain. And Isayama wants us to understand that. Everything Eren is doing is so narrow-minded and tunnel visioned. And every message Isayama has given us throughout the entire course of this series has shown us that Eren's way is not the right way. Eren is so narrow-minded and narrow-focused. He's not seeing all of the other possibilities. And we should avoid becoming like Eren. That's the message. We don't need to be like Eren. That's a bad thing, right? We don't want to do that. It's just the world of Attack on Titan presents itself to where Eren feels like that's the only option that he has. Eren's a very well-written character, don't get me wrong. He's very well-written. I think it's amazing for Isayama to take a main character of a story and develop them like he's developed Eren. And I am not going to judge anybody that sympathizes with Eren. I won't, because there's a lot of things about Eren that, but I'll be honest, them crocodile tears at the opening of this, I was not having much sympathy. I'm like, because Eren is a narrow-minded hillbilly. Basically, my interpretation of him as Romania Mac is not far off. Eren misses so much of the forest for the trees. And there's so many things he says that I'm like, but what if? But if you could just do this one thing, but Eren won't do it, right? And then the whole paths thing, oh my God, we're going to talk about that. So I do recognize that I may be proven wrong by Isayama in the final hour. I am prepared for that. I'm understanding of that. But you're going to have to deal with me trash talking Eren for a little bit because he deserves it in this episode set because it's just, we're going to talk about that. And I cried like I was doing fine. I was doing fine. When Hanji decided to sacrifice themselves, I thought, okay, it's coming. Now's the time. Hanji sacrificing themselves and I was doing okay. And I held it in. I was holding it in, but the moment that Erwin started talking, I was like, oh, Isayama, how could you? No, because it thematically makes so much sense that that's what was going to happen. We were going to tie back around to that. And I'm like, what's interesting though, is that Isayama we'll talk about it in that moment about the paths and everything and Erwin and them showing up not within the paths. That's so interesting to me, right? Okay. Yeah, that's so interesting to me. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about eliminating that and what that could possibly mean here. But I've got stuff up here on Whiteboard Coon. We're going to talk about it as well as we dive into this. But I really liked this episode. I really liked it. God, the doom and gloom though. And Flock was somehow still alive. Son of a bitch. He comes back for like 1 second to be such a bastard. And I'm like, could you just have stayed dead? How dare you? But it's just like to create that moment of like, basically it's a big old cycle. And if Flock had not shot the oil tanks and stopped them from having to weld it back together, then they could have gotten out of there sooner and Hanji may not have had to die. So it's just like, but yeah, I'm going to say some things about Eren. You're probably not going to like what I say about Eren, but you know what? It's my discussion and my thoughts about him. So you're going to have to deal, or go watch something else, I guess. But, so here's the thing. We get this opening scene. Now, I want to talk about this. So we have some theory times, theory crafting. We start this whole thing out with Mikasa saying, see you later. and touching his head saying, Eren. Now, in that moment, do I think that whole see you later, Eren, do I think that they're going to have to kill Eren? Yeah. At this point, I think they're going to have to kill Eren. Do I think that Mikasa's going to do it? I don't know. I'm kind of torn because at this point, on the one hand, I would like them to not kill Eren. I feel like it bugs me so much in the sense that I feel like killing Eren is giving Eren the easy way out because Eren at this point believes he's a monster. He's irreproachable. He's irredeemable. There's nothing good about him. He's had this lack of self-worth for a long time now. And a part of me feels bad for him because I'm like, why are you being a baka? Why are you saying you have no self-worth? You do have self-worth. Did your mother's speech mean nothing to you? She said you're born unto this world, so you are special. I'm like, Carla would be kicking your ass right now because she'd be like, why are you being this way? Like, did my words mean nothing? You know? And we'll talk about that whole Marleyan scene and everything. But part of me, like, I sympathize with Eren feeling like he has no self-worth because so many people go through that where you feel like, you know, you get imposter syndrome, you feel like you're not good enough, whatever. But then, you know, Eren has had people in his life tell him he's worth it. He has people that care about him and he just kind of like ignores it or lets it go over his head. And you're like, Eren, why are you being a dummy? You know, he's got that whole deal going on. So you feel like I feel bad for you, but also, come on, you know, what else can we do? You've literally had people come up to you and be like, we care about you. Why are you acting this way? What else can they do, right? So on the one hand, I don't want Eren to die because I feel like that's the easy way out for him. I feel like Eren wants to die at this point and he wants somebody to kill him. And I'm like, that makes me so mad because I'm like, then just have them kill you back whenever. Why are you going to this extreme? And I know why. I know the answer of why. There'll be people in the comments that are like, well, actually, Eren's doing this for this way. No, I get it. I'm saying it's dumb. That's what I'm saying. I hate it. But I'm just like, it's so frustrating because I think Eren wants somebody to kill him. And I'm like, then what? Stop. Quit being a drama king. Get off your high horse. Stop it. I'm just, but he's a villain. It's like good. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. This is where Eren fully comes into his villain era of being like, it's where I love what Isayama does in drawing the line of being like, this is when characters that are possibly like heroic or, you know, what we consider a hero, this is where they turn into the villain, right? You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Haha, here we are. I feel like this set of turning events is showing that no, Eren has been so warped by his mindset and so warped by his desires and his mission and what he defines as freedom, which Armin questions, that it's drove him to be in this state where, yeah, he's the villain. This is a villain mindset. Everything in this episode that Eren does is something a villain would do. And it's stuff that we get mad at villains for because we're like, that's such flawed reasoning. And there's so many logical fallacies with that. But then it's like, well, that's why they're villains. And what do we do with them? And your options are to, at this point, the problem is, how do you take Eren into custody? He established back during the cell with Hanji that you can't keep him anywhere. He has the Warhammer Titan. He can just dig out like a damn mole and go anywhere he pleases. So you can't just imprison him somewhere. You can't just, you know, if you hack off his limbs, do you keep hacking off his limbs until he can't regenerate anymore? What do you do with that? I guess if Zeke is gone, then if Zeke has been destroyed, then by that logic, he can't use the Founding Titan powers anymore. So in that case, I guess you just keep him detained. But I don't think that's, it's like, what do you do with Eren? What do you do with him if you don't kill him at this point? Because he's committed so many atrocities and he's done so much that's horrifying and bad. Can you forgive him? Can he be allowed to live? Do we make that judgment call? Do we have the right to do that? Are we going to go the same route as Eren and kill him as he's killed others? Do we have the right to do so? It asks a really important question of, like, what do you define a life as, and where do you define the right of taking a life, and how do you, like, Isayama poses a very complex question here, and the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, we'll just kill Eren, but it's like, are we no better? We established throughout this episode that we are all sinners, we are no better than each other, so what right do we have to take a life? And that's why I think that Armin's like, I don't want to kill Eren unless it's a last resort. But Eren is driving them into a corner. He is driving them to the point where they literally will feel like they have no choice. And I'm like, Eren, they're trying to talk to you. They're trying to, like, reason with you. They're trying to, like, back you down and say, hey, can we? And Eren's just like, no, I don't want to take any chances. No. And the sad thing is, you get why Eren would feel that way. You get where he's coming from. But you're just like, it's so frustrating. And it's, Isayama, again, paints this world in a very binary sense, where in the real world, there would be lots of options. In the world of Attack on Titan, the options are quite limited at this point. But it doesn't stop us from the audience. I feel like Isayama is making these very extreme choices happen, and these extreme scenarios happen, to make us, the audience, go, well, that's dumb. Why would you do that? You could just do A, B, and C. And Isayama's like, yes, you can. So maybe in the real world, do that so we don't end up with this scenario, you know? And so I feel like it's very intentional. It's very frustrating. It's very nerve-wracking. I'm like, Isayama, I hate you for this. But it's very thought-provoking, and it makes you go, well, let's not have that happen in the real world. That'd be a damn shame. And I think that's the point, right? So yeah. So I'm just fully ready to rant about Eren in this. I hope y'all, if you're an Eren fan, you probably won't like this discussion. But anyway, going back to where I started from here, Mikasa saying, see you later, Eren. I feel like that's the line that she would say before Eren dies. Do I think Mikasa's going to kill Eren? Maybe, but I don't think so. I don't know how they're going to kill Eren at this point, honestly. I don't think is he inside the head of the Titan? We don't exactly know where Eren is. That's going to be the next thing. It just, my stomach is churning thinking about what's going to happen to Eren in the next episode. My stomach is churning. But I feel like that see you later is his memories from the future. That begs the question. We might as well talk about it. What part has Eren seen? Eren, this is my whole thing of Eren's, like, logic, his tunnel vision, his logic of the Attack Titan, the tunnel vision that he has. The big question is, we don't know how far ahead Eren has seen. That is the big question. That's been the question the last several seasons. We know that the Attack Titan passes down memories. It's passed memories from at least the Rumbling down to Kruger that we know of. So it keeps passing them down. It's like a trickle-down effect from, like, the top Attack Titan down there, whatever. And I feel like at the top is the point Eren's death. Is that the last thing Eren has seen or knows of, the last memory is him dying, and he's just passing it down to get to this point. I have some issues with that. I do. I have some issues with that in narrative-wise. I don't know. If the last memory Eren has had is, I think there needs to be a distinction of what Eren for sure knows and what is kind of subconscious. Because I think that it's this very weird scenario, because subconsciously, I think that Eren dying is the last memory that he has. I don't think the Attack Titan is passing on to another person. I think this is the last Attack Titan. But then that begs the question, well, then what about the Titans? Are their abilities going to pass on to the remaining Eldians? What's going to happen with that? We're going to talk about that. I'm like, So, the subconscious, is the subconscious Eren's death, and this is the last memory he's having under the tree? I do like the motif of the tree. The tree that he, like, him and Mikasa wake up before all this goes down, before all this gets set into motion, right? Before Shiganshina is destroyed, before everything starts, this whole chain of events, it starts under that damn tree, and that's where he wakes up at. And the paths for in the pathways looks like the damn tree as well. Where the founding titan comes from looks like the damn tree. That tree is the center of everything. It is the start of everything. Now, obviously, the tree Eren is sleeping under is not the tree where the founder is from. It's not the path tree, but it's all very similar. The tree motif and the idea of getting out of the forest and the forest being a cycle of violence. Like, Isayama does a really good job of doing symbolism with painting like the forest and the trees as a symbol of violence and breaking out that cycle of violence and all of that good stuff, right? We were talking in the comments about previous volumes with the Night of the End in the Discord and the commentary about when you were at the Forest of the Giant Trees. I loved whoever said this in the comments, but the idea that the Forest of the Giant Trees, it is just like the characters during that arc are so blinded by the violence and their need to act that they don't realize what they're doing, right? The Forest of the Giant Trees during Savagery and at the beginning of the series, it's like the trees are blinding them from realizing what's, you know, the true heart of the situation. And then that's like Night of the End, where they're like sitting there and they're navigating through the trees, and then they finally find their way out of the forest to go, and they're all working together, right? So I do like the tree motif. It is not lost on me. There's a lot of symbolism there. It's all very obvious symbolism, but it's good. It's well done, well executed. But there is the idea of, is Eren's death the very last memory he has? And that's what we started with from the beginning and then worked our way backwards, and now we're just, you know, coming full circle. What does he know as the final point? From what Grisha said to Zeke, it seemed like Eren at least knew the rumbling was the point he was getting to. Like, seeing the end of the world was the point that he knew, that, or that he thinks he has to get to, right, for things to go down. And so we don't know for sure if the rumbling is the furthest Eren has seen or if it's something beyond that. But if it was the rumbling, let's go scenario A. If the rumbling was what Eren saw going down, and he saw that being the only final last resort to saving the world, he's like, okay, well, he believes that future is inevitable. He believes that the only way to stop things in the end is going to be the rumbling. So it drives him to a sense of trying to like find some other way, and he's not able to do that. So he's like, well, I guess I'm going with this because that's all I know. And so Eren thinks he cannot stop it, and it influences everything leading up to it. It influences why he begs Grisha to do what he does, why he influences Kruger, all those things. And so Eren's kind of a slave to manifest destiny. Everybody's a slave to something, right? And Eren is a slave to his sense of not being able to change the future. And I'm like, Eren, have you ever heard of the butterfly effect? Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever heard of parallel universes? Have you heard of that? And he thinks that freedom will be all that he needs. And the thing about it is, as we see in the paths halfway through this episode, what we see is that Eren becomes Ymir. He's a slave just like she is. The horrifying thing is that now there's little evil child form Eren, which I'm thinking of Akumo no Ko. You know, I'm thinking of the child of evil. He becomes like Ymir. The little child version of himself is trapped in the paths just like her. Rather than freeing her like he said he was going to during, you know, Members of the Future, he just becomes like her. Now he's a slave too in the paths. And now there's two of them. They're bestie friends. They're making sandcastles together. And he didn't end up freeing her. He just ends up becoming like her, which is mind-blowing to me. So yeah, or at least that's the way it looks now. Now, next episode may be proven wrong, but I'm like, so yes. Now, if this is the case, and the farthest Eren has knowingly seen is the rumbling, the farthest that his memories have been shown to him are the rumbling, everything he does up until this point makes sense. And you're like, okay. But if he's seen his own death, and his own death is what he's working towards, I'm going to take a little issue with that, because Eren, then it's like, well, then what is freedom to you then? Because the things that he says in this episode then are a little bit contradictory and don't quite make sense. Because if he knows that he's going to die by the end of this, and he's been working towards his death, there's a difference between if he's been working towards his death and if he thinks the death is coming because of the rumbling. There is a distinct difference in that, right? So one of the questions I have up here is, does Eren expect his friends to kill him to atone for his sins? So there is the question, like, did Eren always anticipate his death? Or does he now think it's a result of his actions? Because I'm going to take a little bit of issue with that, honestly. And again, this ties to Eren is a flawed character. I know some people in the comments are like, Eren's this martyr. He's this god. He's Chad Giga. I'm like, no, Eren is a very flawed character. He has a lot of problems. Eren is a very well-written character, but as a character himself, he has a lot of problems and a lot of flaws and things you clearly can't like about him or should not like about him. And I'm like, if Eren always anticipated his death, I'm going to take a little issue with that narratively, because his whole gig has been about to be born is to be free. And the irony of all ironies is that Eren just, he doesn't get it, you know? Because the whole thing about Armin and about them, like during Dawn of Humanity, when they're at Marley at Libero, the whole point is they're enjoying these little freedoms, and they're just enjoying their existence. And yes, bad things can happen. Bad things happen to everybody. Nobody lives a perfect life. It's not possible. You're going to go through hardship. You're going to go through trauma. You're going to have some parts of your life that are not fair, and it sucks. But are you going to let that part of your life that's ugly become all of it? And that's what's happened to Eren. He can't see the beauty in the world. Instead, all he sees is that this world is ugly and I have to destroy it. That's all he sees. He doesn't see the beauty that's within it like Mikasa and Armin have. It's like, because Mikasa, she's the one that said this world is cruel, but it's also beautiful. And so I feel like if Eren has always believed that his actions are going to lead to his death, then we're going to talk about that, because I'm like, but if he believes that his death is coming because of what he's done, that's a little bit different. That tweaks a little bit, right? We're going to talk about it. But Eren is a very flawed character, and we should talk about that. So Eren back. I've already talked for 30 minutes, and we're just on the first 5 seconds of this entire episode. So we have the tree, and she says, let's head back. And he's like, what am I doing here? And she said, are you still half asleep? And he talks about he had a really long dream, which is basically memories from the future happening, right? And she says, well, what was it about? And he says, I can't remember anymore. It's like, yeah, his memory's coming back to him. And then he's crying, possibly because he sees, the results of everything that's led him to this point. And then we have, the first one, the rumbling. So we have these kids, right? We start talking about the two kids, the one that's lost his hand, and they're gathering up money to try to free themselves. And again, I'm not going to, we've dallied long enough in the discussions over and over again about how horrible the worlds are and how horrible the situations for a lot of these characters are. We've talked about that so much. But yeah, it's just saying that there's this cycle of violence, there's this cycle of hatred and discrimination that's happening. And so what is the solution to that? Well, the most extreme solution possible that you can possibly think of that's on the very, very end of the spectrum of bad is, man, the world is unjust and cruel and people suffer because of it. Let's just kill everyone. That's Eren's solution. We'll just kill everyone. Problem solved. Then there will be no conflict because there will be no people. And to quote Hanji, that's wrong. I will never be convinced by somebody that tells me that Eren's plan is a good one. It's just not. And I feel like Isayama is showing us in the first 10 minutes of this episode that it's a bad idea. That I feel like maybe Isayama, as he was writing, saw some fans going, yeah, Eren's got the right idea about this rumbling. And Isayama's like, okay. Isayama's like, so I gotta do this. Because it's not good. Nothing about the first 10 minutes of this episode should tell you that Eren is a villain and this plan is terribly wrong for a number of reasons. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the hardships these kids had, it shows them being crushed under the feet, blood splattering, catching on fire. It shows them dying in the most cruel and horrifying ways, right? why should we think that was a good thing? And this episode clearly paints it as it not being a good thing. So we cut to Eren talking, right? We cut to Eren talking as he's walking around. Now, he says, the day will come when I kill every one of these people. So at this point, Eren believes that there is nothing, that the future is inevitable. There's nothing he can do to stop it, right? He doesn't think it's possible. He says the deaths are not far off. Not just deaths, but murders. I am glad that Eren realizes he's a murderer, right? Because that's literally what he is. He's murdered millions of people. That's what it is. And so he's walking around being like, it's our... The thing that bugs me about Eren is his tunnel vision. I think that Eren's his biggest fault is believing that there is, if he can't find the solution, no one can. That's kind of his mentality, right? And that's a very villain mentality in storytelling, is when the villain of the story believes that they're the only It's kind of like it's a weird twist on the savior complex, which, again, is partially, it's been set up since the first volume of this series, or not really the first volume, but you have Eren, who is like, when something bad happened, he's like, I'm going to be the one to save the day and to stop the villains and save the day. And we applaud that in storytelling. We're like, yeah, hero's journey. You're going to save the day and do all this. And then as the story goes on, Eren is given more and more responsibility, and he's being viewed more and more as the savior, and more people are placing their hopes and stuff on him rather than doing it themselves. And we're like, oh, yeah, I mean, that happens in storytelling. Sure. And then it gets to the point where Eren, who has kind of developed this like pseudo savior complex. Not that he thinks, oh, I'm going to be the one to do it. He has this moment where when he wanted Historia to eat him, he was like, oh no, I can't save anybody. And so we'll talk about that too, because that gets brought up in this. But then because of that weird savior complex being pushed onto Eren, it suddenly has him thinking that if he can't solve the problem, no one else can. And it goes back to like episode 14 in season 1, where he's like, place all your bets on me. Let me be the one to follow. Let me be the one to solve the problem. Like, he's had this mentality since season 1. It's not gone anywhere. It's just gotten more warped and twisted and set in stone. And Eren has become more and more concrete in thinking that he's the only one that can solve the problem. And if he can't solve it, well, who can? And the sad thing is that Eren, like we've talked about so much in this series, has only been presented with scenarios where he's been proven right. Eren has not been present in the situations that would contradict his ideologies. He's not been present during Mr. Browse's conversations. He's not been present for Gabby and Kaya and Falco's journey. He's not been present in situations that we've seen, like with Uri and Kenny. He's not been present in situations that have proven him wrong. So as far as Eren is concerned, he believes that, yeah, everything is set in stone, but we, the audience, know it's not. Nothing is set in stone. Ever. It's like, no. And I'm sure some people will argue, well, because he can see the future version of himself, he knows it says, butterfly effect, change it. Why are you relying upon that? Do something different. But that's not Eren. Eren is tunnel visioned, and he's narrow-minded in that regard, and cannot see that being a possibility. Even though we, the audience, are like sitting here shaking the screen going, Eren, that's not set in stone. You can do something. I'm like, do you not? And again, that's just a sign that Eren doesn't really have freedom. He doesn't have the freedom that he's trying to tell everybody that he does have, right? He says, I don't think I'm going to find a way for Parody Island to survive. Again, that doubt. He says, I don't think I'm going to be able to find another way. He's like already has that doubt in himself, and nothing he sees during this time period proves him right. Or proves him wrong, rather. So then, and I was like, okay, well, we know this about Eren. We've kind of seen this coming. Everything is going to crumble. And I like that he's positioned in black throughout this, and the way he's walking throughout this entire scene is like that of a colossal titan slowly walking on this, moving forward. Everything they just keep moving forward. They can't turn back. They can't go the other way. It's like, Isayama was like, how much symbolism do you want? All of it? Okay, great. The houses, the people, the animals, all life and all dreams. Which is really sad because Eren, what's so frustrating about his character and why we're like, what I appreciate that Isayama does with him, because Eren is the villain of the series at this point. He is. But what I like that Isayama does is he gives us an understanding of Eren's inner psychology. We finally get to see a little bit about what's in his head. We haven't this whole time. We get a little bit, and then you're like, okay, well, this is confirming some things. But I'm like, what's so distressing is that you have Armin, who is trying to fight for peace because he recognizes that everyone has different dreams and everyone is worthy of life. And it's this dichotomy where you have Armin, who believes everything is worthy of being alive and everyone has dreams. And so I'm going to try to fight to understand them and foster that towards a possibility, at least for a while. And then you have Eren, who's like, everybody has life and dreams, but they're all garbage. So I'm going to murder them all, because otherwise I can't have my freedom. We're going to talk about that. Eren's a bit selfish, and that selfishness comes out in this episode. And I was like, aha! There it is. He is very selfish. And we're going to talk about it. But yeah, he's like, all dreams and all life. I'm like, mm-hmm. And then he sees like the woman that's pregnant and the guy with the baguettes and thinks of his mom. And he's like, what would my mom think of that? Well, she'd think you're being a piece of shit is what she would think of. Did you not, bystander, were you not there? Were you not there to hear Keith? Keith's rolling in his grave being like, your mom said everybody's special and we all deserve life. Okay. So frustrating. I'm like, your mom would not be happy with you right now. Carla would be livid if she knew what he was doing, right? Should we, the Eldians, be the ones to die instead? And again, this is what is frustrating, is that Eren is only seeing a black and white picture. Eren is only seeing things in terms of black and white. Either the Eldians are to blame or the rest of the world is to blame. But as we've seen throughout this series, with Magath talking with Willie Tybur, with Magath and everybody at Night of the End, with Uri and Kinney, with all of these scenarios that Eren was not present for by and by, we have seen that no, the blame is not on one party versus the other. The blame is with everyone. And unless we come to that understanding of realizing that we are all to blame, and we work from that point, then nothing changes. But Eren does not understand that. He only says, well, are we going to be like King Fritz, or do I be like myself? And it's like, those aren't the only two options on the table. He's like, should we be the ones to die instead? No! And like, no, that's not it at all. And you see this shadow to wipe out the island would at least end far fewer lives than wiping out the rest of the world. And I understand where Eren's coming from in being like, that shouldn't have to happen. Being like, without any more Eldians, the world would never have to worry about Titans again. But again, like Erwin Smith said, that doesn't solve conflict. I like how I got a little frustrated when Yelena was trying to get Hanji to admit that Zeke's plan would have been better than Eren's. I don't think that's the case. Both plans, as I've said with previous manga reviews, both plans are running away from the problem. If you euthanize all the Eldians and there suddenly aren't any Titans anymore, well, congratulations, you committed genocide over a group of people. Guess what? There's going to still be war and conflict if people don't learn from it and talk it out. Right? Now, there's going to be like, maybe Marley will be the next Eldia, and they'll be singled out by another country, and the cycle of violence continues, right? Because you didn't address the problem, you just ran away from it by targeting a group of people and getting rid of them, right? If Eren destroys the rest of the world, and there's just Parody Island left over, and what a gracious thing of him to give them their freedom to do whatever they want, guess what? They're going to argue amongst themselves. And then there's probably going to be conflict, and then what do? It didn't solve anything, right? So it's still running away from the problem. And granted, these problems in this world are complicated and hard, and they're not easy to solve. But that doesn't mean it's not worth solving. That goes back to Niccolo's conversation of, if you fail, you just keep trying. And Eren's like, nah, I don't want to do that. Failure is not acceptable. Yeah, and just, But then Eren's like, I don't want to accept an ending like that. Yeah, and that face that's Ymir's face, right? That goes back to Ymir, where it's like, no, I'm not going to accept that my people have to die. And totally understand that. Totally get that. Can relate, can understand. You don't want to have to like admit that your people deserve death. No. But Eren's solutions are so binary that it's like, no, that's not how the real world works. There are more than just two solutions to the problem. There's more than just option A and option B. There's like a plethora of options. It's just, it depends on so many factors. But the part that made me mad is when he sees the kid getting beat up and he's like, this scene, I've seen this memory in a memory of the future. Now, and he says, I think I'm going to save that boy. Now, I don't think that's the case. I think that his memories are mixed up because isn't it that, because we saw this back in season 4, part 2, there was an image of 3 guys bent over attacking someone. But in the manga, like way back when I started the manga, in the manga, there's a scene of Armin getting attacked by 3 guys and Eren saves him, right? So there's a distinction there. You have Eren, back when Eren, before he knew all of this, you have Eren saving Armin, and then you have Eren choosing not to save the boy. And the difference is that Eren believes that there's no point. There's no point. He's going to die anyway. Like a very nihilistic view. Eren is extremely nihilistic at this point, where he's going to die anyway. What's the point in saving him? And then you have Armin that he saved because that's that humanity. That's that humanity and compassion. So he was like, oh, the funny thing, the irony of all ironies is going to be if the thing about this is if the subconscious version of Eren from the future knew, this is how the time travel is so weird and messed up, is that if subconsciously Eren in the future Titan is like, I have to die for the world to be saved at this point. If Eren realizes at the 11th hour that, oh shit, everything I've done has doomed the world. What? How could this have been? What a Shakespearean villain moment for me to have, which is what I think it's leading to, is that Armin's going to have to kill Eren. Armin doesn't want to, but he's going to be left with no choice. And the ultimate irony is going to be that Eren's going to realize in his subconscious, wait, it wasn't that boy I was thinking of. It was me remembering back when I saved Armin. And that moment of me saving Armin is what led all the way back around. Now, is that going to prove Eren being right by his actions? Yes. Is that going to be like a big eye roll moment? Yes. But I would like it to be a subconscious thing that Eren doesn't even realize until the very end. And then be like, oh, huh. But also it would be like a way of him kind of course correcting, being like, oh, well, that's why I want it to be subconscious. I don't want Eren to know his fate until the end. And then if he dies, be like, my actions led me to this point. Oh my God. I mean, still, we'll have to talk about that when we get to it. But he says, I think I'm going to save that boy. And so he goes where this boy's getting beat up. And then they like show up and Eren looks at him. And he looks so timid there. And they're like, this refugee brat is a repeat pickpocket. We're just a couple of honest local businessmen taking out the trash. Like, this has nothing to do with you. So get lost. And then Eren says, yeah, you're right. And then he walks away. And the kid's like, what? And he's like, what was I thinking? I'm going to kill the boy either way. Why should I care about saving him? And then he's like, I'm going to commit the ultimate act of violence. I have no right to play the hero now. But he saves him anyway, right? Yeah, he takes him away and saves him regardless. But I can't change the future either. So he did. So that part was making me mad because at first I thought, what I thought had happened was that Eren had said no. And then this was the kid that they rescued from the pickpocket scene. And so Eren ended up taking him back after the fact. I feel like that's what it was at first, but now I realize, so Eren did go back and save him regardless, right? But there's that moment where Eren's just like, well, I'm going to kill everybody anyway, so what difference does it make? And I'm like, it's so frustrating because it's like your actions do have consequences, but you can always change those actions. And Eren doesn't believe that that's a possibility, right? He's like, I turned out the same as you, Reiner. a half-assed piece of shit. And he beat those guys up. Okay, so he did beat them up, right? Okay, I'm glad we got that established. I thought for a second when they panned down during the scene that it was Reiner in the alleyway when Eren was talking about him being a piece of shit. And I was like, oh, that's a funny twist. No, it was the guys that he beat up to save the kid. Okay. And he's like, no, that's not it. I'm something even worse. Because he's like, I'm saving this kid even though I know I'm going to kill him. And I'm just like, I know some people will be moved by Eren's tears. They'll be moved by him feeling so sorry that he's going to kill this kid later on. I am not one of them. I am not one that is moved by Eren's tears because I'm like, he's such a baka. And I'm like, Eren, I'm like, you are a product of your own making. I'm like, you're a monster of your own design. You don't have to be this way. But he thinks he's always been this way. You know, it's one of those things where Eren has accepted his nature and that he's always been born to be like this. And he doesn't believe that he can change at this point. And I'm like, well, you can, but you've decided not to. So here we are. So I don't feel bad for him and his tears. His tears frustrate me more than anything. Because then when we see like all the destruction and he says, it's nothing like what pissed me off was that I'm glad Armin came to the realization of, wait, maybe there's life out there beyond just Marley. And I was like, oh, thank God. I was like, what I get so mad at is that Eren was like, I went to this really bad country outside the walls. I just went to one country and realized that they weren't nice. And that's giving me the impression of the entire world. I was like, you know, basically, I'm like, have you seen the ice deserts? Have you seen the lava fields? Have you seen all the stuff in the book? No, you went to one page and realized that one page was as bad as what you'd been in and just assumed that was the rest of the world. What? It's just frustrating. I'm so glad that Armin, God love him, thought beyond that because he's just like, it's not what I imagined. I like this kid's just like, why are you unloading all this on me? And so Eren's just like, oh, the world isn't as good as I thought it was going to be. And I'm like, again, he can't see anything. He can't see anything good from it. And this kid's like, the hell? And he's just sitting there crying. He's like, I'm sorry. Yeah, no. I don't, and then yeah, the kid sees Ymir right at the end. Oh my God, of her just standing there like the reckoning, like Judgment Day. Oh, you saw like his teeth come out and he says, I'm so sorry. I'm like, that bugs me so much. You know what? You know why I have such a visceral reaction to that I'm so sorry line? Because I think it reminds me of how I feel when people spoil me. I've been spoiled about shows through the Discord, through comments, and you know what happens when I get spoiled? The people are like, oh my God, I'm sorry. That's great and all. I'm glad that you feel remorse for what you did, but that doesn't change the fact that you spoiled me. It doesn't change that fact. It's not proactively doing anything to rectify the situation. It's just like, and it's happened on repeat with some people. And I think that's where I get a little mad is that people will be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry I spoiled you. And then a month later, I get spoiled by that same person again. They're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, stop. I'm like, if you really feel sorry about something, then take action, be proactive, and stop the pattern that you're doing. And then it will make a difference. But just saying you're sorry, that's great, good on you, but that doesn't solve the problem. And I think that's why I get so mad at Eren in this moment, because he's like that person that spoils. He's like, I'm so sorry, but I'm still gonna spoil anyway. And I'm like, ah! So I'm just like, Eren saying he's sorry and then continuing the path that he's going on, it makes that sorry feel so hollow and so inconsequential. And so it feels like you're not even trying. It's like you say you're sorry, but then you do nothing to rectify the situation. And then he doubles down when Armin and them try to talk to him. Again, I warned y'all. I warned y'all. I wasn't going to be happy about this. And maybe, you know, when I watch part 2, I will feel differently. But right now, I'm just like, Eren, he's such a villain and in such villain mode. And I'm like, and then it's almost like Isayama's like, yeah, sorry doesn't cut it. You're still doing all these horrifying things and you still killed this kid. What can be done, you know? Your actions speak louder. Actions speak louder than words. And he can say he's sorry all he wants, but then when you watch these kids get trampled and these families be destroyed, what does that say? You know? What does that say? And so, yeah, just leaving Liberio, leaving the gates. I love his grandparents die. So there's that. And they showed them dying, showed like all this blood and guts, people burning alive in the streets, and people trying to like getting run over, trying to scramble and escape. It's absolutely horrible and horrifying. And then we see like the little skeletal body of Eren and the founder like walking through. Right? Oh my God. And all this despair and blood and guts. And then you see like the one who lays eyes on these is the most free of seeing the world, is the freest person in the entire world. Like that juxtaposition of all this destruction, and then you see Eren like on top of the wall, like he's on top of the world. Like the cruelest irony of everything is that Eren is in the biggest position of power, where he could see the world for all of its glory. He could see the beauty of the world, and he's destroying it. Like he finally has the chance to see. He finally has the chance to be free and see the world for all that it is. And you juxtapose him in the bluest clear sky, and he's like, this is true freedom. But what is freedom? You know, that's what Armin asks at the end of this. What is freedom to you? And Eren is a slave to that true freedom. Like he's like, if I can't get what I want, and I can't get to where I have the opportunity. And that's kind of the biggest double side of this, is that you have to be on top of the world and in control of everything to get that true freedom. But then is it true freedom if there's nothing to look at? Because right now there's nothing to look at. He's destroying it all. Ugh. And that juxtaposition of Eren seems, it's like what Eren thought he was getting and what in his mind he thinks true freedom is, and then the reality of it setting in. It is something. It is something. Are we supposed to like Eren for this? I don't think we are. Because then, yeah, he says we finally made it. Yeah, we got to the point where we can see it all. And it's just blood and destruction. Yeah. And then that's when he says, right, Armin? And then we see Armin in the paths looking at the kid. Yeah. Looking at the kid version there, just standing there looking at him, right? Like in that moment, Eren projects over to Armin being like, look, this is what we wanted, right? But that's, again, it's Armin kind of realizing, oh, the Eren that I thought we were friends with, that I thought I understood, I did not understand. Because to Armin, freedom is different than what Eren sees, right? To Armin, that freedom is not... There's a difference between... To Eren, it's that idea of control. He wants to be able to see... He wants to be able to go wherever he wants to see anything that he wants to at any given time, without restraint and without any worry of someone else trying to control him. The only way for that to be possible is if you're alone. Is if no one else is in the way. And that's what Eren's building towards, right? And for Armin, I don't think Armin ever thought that he wanted to be in control of it or be on top of the world. He just wanted to be able to have the opportunity. And so their dreams are so different at this point. And I think Armin's slowly realizing, looking at little kid Eren, being like, oh, shit. This is what we've been dealing with? Oh, about that. And then Armin's like, Eren. Oh, and then he's back. Yes, and then he's back on the ship. It's like, we made it. We can see it all. Isn't this what we wanted? And Armin's like, no, not exactly. We have different interpretations of the same book. Well, in that first 11 minutes, I've talked for an hour, so there we go. I'm glad we get away from Eren for a little bit. We need to get away from Eren for a little bit, okay? But And then talking about, yeah, have you healed up yet? And then Armin's suddenly back and sees Annie there. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm so glad we get this moment between Armin and Annie and them realizing that they like each other. Thank God. I was like, oh my God, thank goodness they've realized they like each other. It's a thing. I'm fully convinced that Annie and Falco and Gabby are going to show up to help them in part 2. I think that's going to be a thing. And maybe will Annie and Armin be able to have time with each other after this? I don't know. But yeah, he gets to sit down and she's like, why did you keep talking to me? Like, did you have anybody else to talk to? And Armin's like, well, I liked you all this time, but also, no. Because there is some truth to that. Like, Armin, who else could Armin have talked to about Eren? He can't talk to Mikasa because at the time, Armin knew that Mikasa liked Eren. So he's like, if I talk to her about it, she's just going to she's not going to give me the answer I want. And occasionally you need to talk to somebody about your crush. You need to talk to somebody, other than your best friend about your best friend, right? So I understand why Armin and Hitch talk to Annie. They both like Annie in different capacities, but also because they really don't have anybody they can talk to that would be like, sometimes you just need somebody to vent to that's just there to be a soundboard. And that's what Armin needed. And Armin is such a thinker that I think anybody else he talked to would have gave a rebuttal. And that's not what Armin wanted. Armin just wanted to lament to somebody and, use them as a means to think about stuff and kind of rationalize and work their way. He needed a therapist. That's what Armin needed. Armin needed a therapist, and Annie just happened to be there and could be in that function and capacity. But he also likes her. Now, the elephant in the room is obviously, some people are going to say, well, Armin, because a lot of the things that Armin talks about in this conversation and the way he answers questions did remind me a little bit about Bertolt. It did. I'm not going to lie. And I know some people are going to say that Eren's right and that Armin's being influenced by Bertolt being inside of him. But I will argue that I think that Armin, I think there's enough substantial proof from season 1 back when Armin was like, when he figured out Annie was the female Titan during Smile and Mercy, when he was like talking about how he was like planning to catch her and everything. I think there was enough there, and the whole good girl versus bad girl, good boy versus bad boy thing. I think there's enough there to show that Armin's liked her all along. He may not have liked her at the time, but he had an interest in her, right? And then it's kind of developed over time into this, right? But I think it's always been there, so I don't fully believe Eren's right about that, correct? But I just love their conversation where he realizes like, oh, this is why I've been talking to you. And so the thing is, she's like, were you really just chatting with me as a way to like, talk with the enemy and make it to where we could like be at peace with one another? She's basically like saying like, oh, were you just trying to like bridge the gap between us and make us chums again when I was released or whatever, and make it seem like you were being friends with the enemy? She's like, and Armin doesn't immediately answer her, but I love when he grabs her hand and like her ears are so red. I'm like, yes, I love it. I love him grabbing her hand. Armin's good at grabbing hands. And he says, sit back down. I'm like, for Armin to like take kind of control in this situation and be like, no, sit down, I'm not done talking. I'm like, hello, Armin. Hello, Armin. And he's like, I know I said this already, but I don't like being called a good person. And I feel like that's when Armin and Annie connect. They really do, because Annie is like, she's always been like, if I'm a good girl, is that good enough for you? And you can tie that back to Ymir, whatever. But Armin's like, I'm not a good person. I've killed people. I've strategized against my own people. He's like, I assaulted Liberio as the Colossus Titan for whatever reason, whatever excuse I could give. It doesn't change my actions. He's like, I'm not a good person. But that isn't going to stop me from trying to do what I think is right. And you could argue that Eren is the same way. Eren knows he's not a good person. I think Eren takes it to a very big extreme where he thinks he's a monster. But I think that, and Armin calls himself a monster too, but I think that the difference between Armin and Eren is they both don't believe they're good people. They both know that they've committed sins, whatever. But I think Eren takes it to the most extreme possible, whereas Armin's like, yeah, I've done these things, but also I'm trying to find some way to do right by the most people. whereas Eren's trying to do just right by himself at the end of the day. We'll talk about it, but yeah, they're kind of polar opposites in terms of that. I mean, Isayama said that he wishes he was like Armin, you know? That Armin could do all these bad things and still try to find the good in humanity and still work towards humanity as a whole. Like, that's what makes Armin... And this is the line that makes all the difference. And we cut to Eren deep within the Founder, and he looks absolutely awful. He looks like he's being sucked dry by the Founder, and he's just in this despair, right? In this sense of despair. Oh, it's awful, right? But Armin's saying the line here, but... Where we go back to that line? Because he looks at the bird. He's like, Eren and I, we thought we'd be able to fulfill our own dream by visiting all the unknown parts of the world. And we found out that it was not what we wanted. It's nothing like we had imagined. But, and he sees the bird, right? That there is a little bit of beauty in the world along with the cruelty. There's still good in it, right? And there's still parts we haven't seen yet. And that's what he says, I want to believe there's a side to this outside world we haven't seen yet. Yes, that is the biggest difference between Armin and Eren at this point. Eren believes he saw the cruelty of one side of the world, assumed it accounted for everything, and was like, nope, world's beyond saving. And then Armin, on the other hand, is like, I still believe there's a part that's good in this world, so I'm going to fight to keep finding it. That's like the biggest... We should all be like Armin. We should all try to find the good in the world. We should not just give up after... It's like if you went to a bad hotel. You went to like one bad hotel. And you were like, hotels are the worst. Never staying in them again. And I'm like, you just based that off one experience. Can't you go to a different one? Nope. All of them need to burn. That's basically Eren at this point. And Armin's like, no, I believe there's a side to this outside world we haven't seen yet. And I think that that's the difference between Eren and Armin. Eren is so convinced that this is the only way. And he's just like, and I don't think we're supposed to feel like Eren's in the right at this point. And when you look at Eren and how miserable he looks, that should be a sign from Isayama that no, we should not think that this is good. We should not think that Eren is justified or right in what he's doing. We should think that Eren's miserable because he's chosen this path. Whereas Armin still has that spark of life in him, right? Blah. Yes. So anyway, we have the Osmobito, and they're in the port, and Hanji's talking about it. And then poor Falco. Falco just waking up after turning into a Titan for the first time and realizing Magath is dead. His entire family could be dead. All of this. It's so heartbreaking. And Pika's like, I don't know what to do at this point. What can we do? What do we do? You know, but Pete has decided to live out Magath's words because that's, you know, the only thing Pete can find to do well. And so, in any case, Annie decides to stay behind. Annie's like, I don't want to go fight anymore. If there's no cause for me, I'm just going to sit this one out. I'm going to stay with Gabby and Falco till the end and do that with the Osmobito woman. And Mika says, like, well, we've got to do whatever we can. And Annie's like, I told you I'm not doing it. I'm not going. I'm just going to, she's like, I don't understand what it means to save humanity. Like, and honestly, Annie comes to this from a very realistic perspective. Annie's entire life has been being judged and being used and abused by the people around her. And so she's like, I don't know if it's worth saving these people. And I always appreciate Annie's honesty. But the thing that makes me, I think that what elevates Annie for me over Eren as a character in some regards is that Annie is being transparent and communicating that she doesn't get it. You know, that's the one thing that's so frustrating about Eren throughout this entire series is Eren doesn't tell people how he feels. He doesn't tell Mikasa and Armin, his best friends in the world, what he's going through. Because he, you know, for whatever reason, he doesn't think it's worth it. And meanwhile, Annie, who is not best friends with Mikasa by any accounts whatsoever, she like bears her soul to Mikasa. And it's like, for Annie to do that and be so transparent, I mean, you get it. It makes sense for her. She's like, I don't know what to do. She's like, they've only ever been a boot on our neck. She's like, even if the rumbling stops, nobody would support the Eldians after what happened to Marley. She's like, and they do bring up a good point because my theory has been since, you know, around the time that Eren started becoming full-fledged villain and the rumbling happened, my theory has been that it's going to get to a point. It's going to go back to what Pixis said way back in season 1, that if the world was united against one negative force and that negative force was wiped out, then everybody would be like, oh, thank God. Whew. All right, well, I'm glad we stopped that from happening. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. And Eren kind of like got on to Pixis at the time and was like, that's dumb. It's like self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what Eren's doing right now. Eren is becoming that force that if they stop them, it is going to make a difference. And it is because by the end of this, Marley and the Eldians were like, if we get out of this alive, we're not going to fight anymore, right? Right? So at this point, we should probably bring up what's over here. And that's what I think it's going to get to. Now, whether Eren realized that or not from the start, if it comes out that Eren realized that from the very beginning, that he had to become the villain to... Again, this is from what has been known and what has developed, right? If Eren figures out by the very end that by them killing him, it's going to save the world, and if he's figured that out at this point, then sure. Okay. It's still going to be like, we really had to go through all of this to get to this point, I guess. Moral of the story, don't let it get to this point, you know? But if Eren's known that from the very beginning, I'm going to be like, really? But again, so the idea is, if you have mutual benefit between party 1 and party 2, if there's mutual benefit, there's no issues, right? Nothing's a problem, right? No problems to be had. I think a good example of that is Mr. Browse and Niccolo. They are from 2 different parties, but they both share a mutual connection through Sasha, and there's no issues. Ta-da. Then if you have 2 parties that are disagreeing and they decide to negotiate, then there's compromise. A good example of this is Magath and Reiner and the Warriors when they decide to go attack Parody in season 4, part 1. Or at Night of the End. We have 2 parties that disagree, but they come to a compromise and they're like, look, we have no choice. We got to work together. Problem solved. Then, if you have 2 parties that just disagree with one another and they don't want to compromise or negotiate, then you're going to have violence. So, in that case, you have the Warriors versus the Survey Corps season 3, part 2. They're both disagreeing with one. Basically, it's like Bertolt and Armin. They can't come to agreement together, so it ends in violence. That's the example of that. But then if you have one party that wants to compromise, but the other does not, it's going to end up in violence anyway. So again, you talk about the idea of Flock and the Jaegerists versus the Survey Corps, where they're like, well, why don't we compromise? They're like, nope. And so it's like that, it's not going to lead to anything good happening either. So then you have this cycle. You have to gain understanding, both sides have to communicate, right? That's to communicate, you have to stop violence. So if you want to gain understanding, you have to communicate. If you want to gain trust, you have to create understanding. To gain that trust by understanding, you have to communicate. And in order to communicate, you have to stop killing each other and talk, which is what happens during Night of the End, right? And we've seen this happen through Uri and Kenny by both the violence brought them together, but it was Uri, who was in a position of power, not killing Kenny, that allowed them to talk and to stop the violence, right? By Armin and Annie, both of them coming together and being able to gain an understanding of each other by talking. So you have different examples of how this has all been going about. You have Armin and Annie, by communicating, they were able to gain an understanding of one another and realize they liked one another. Ta-da! By Keith and Magath, them understanding one another allowed them to gain trust and be able to stop the violence. They kept the others out of the forest by destroying the ship together. Mr. Browse, the whole idea of understanding, and you have to keep that cycle going. And then my thing with Uri and Kenny is, and this is going to connect to Eren, Uri was in a place of power. Uri knew what Kenny was capable of and chose to spare him. And that started that dialogue, right? Eren, in this case, is in a position of power. He could do anything he wants to at this point, but he's not stopping to talk with the other side. Instead, he's just going to flatline it, right? So I think that's a big difference to point out. And then you have like the idea of learning from history and being in a place of understanding and that feeling of mortality. And that's what McGath was going on about. Like during season 4, part 1, McGath was like, look, Marley is not involved in the trenches. They don't know what war is. They don't know the price of their mortality and how close it can be from being taken away. So they don't understand. And because they don't understand, they don't feel sympathy or the realization that they need to stop this. So he's like, I want to stop the Titan Warrior program, get our own people involved. And when they see how shit goes down, they'll be like, wow, this is bad. Let's stop this. And that's kind of where we get to at the end of this episode is the people on top of Fort Salva, where this all started. Like, we just come full circle. I love it. The whole time they said Fort Salva, I was like, that's where the tanks were, and that's where Peake and Galliard showed up and all that. But yeah, we come full circle. They all are up there, and they're like, hey, if we get out of this alive, we're not going to be shit to you anymore, because this is a lot worse. It's exactly what McGath and them were wanting to know. It's that idea of learning from history. And so far, in this world of Attack on Titan, nobody's been learning from history. The same mistakes get repeated over and over and over and over again. And the moral of the story from Isayama is, if you don't learn from your mistakes, eventually, and history keeps repeating itself, eventually it's going to get to the point where there's no going back, where there's going to be a rumbling. And Japan's experienced it. Just saying. Just saying, I'm not lost on the history that it's happened. A major act of violence killing millions that's affected millions for years since. Just saying, historically it's happened. It's not good. And it's always been on the table ever since then. Like, even in our own world, the idea of like nuclear war is, it's a rumbling. It'll kill everyone and the world will be destroyed. Be a shame if we let it get to that point. And that's the whole message of Attack on Titan. Don't let it get to that point. Because then there's no going back. Right? It's like Isayama's being like, please do not let this happen. Eren is literally a nuclear bomb and we're supposed to prevent that from happening. Right? So yeah. So anyway, Mikasa and Annie are having this conversation, right? And she's like, if you feel bad about it, watching everyone risk their lives. She said, I feel bad because everybody's risking their lives for the hope of saving their homeland. And she keeps on looking at Armin. She's like, but I can't fight anymore. And she's looking right at Armin. I want my final moments to be peaceful. And then Armin, he doesn't look at her at that moment, but she looks at him. And God, it's such a callback to Berthold where Reiner was like, it's like, you stare too much. You stare so much that everyone can know. And that moment comes up with her and Armin in this moment. And she looks at him. And that's when Mikasa's like, wait a minute. Hold on. And then Annie's like, oh, shit. I know what the funny part about this is that Armin's the only one she's staring at in that direction. Mikasa's like, wait, she's not looking at the airplane repairman. She doesn't have the hots for Jean. Who has the hots for Jean? Can't be Connie. Armin! And that's when she blushes and looks away. And Mikasa's like, excuse me? Like, what? You like Armin since when? And she's like, what? She's like, oh, I get it now. You get what? I love this moment. You can save yourself from having to suffer if you want. But Armin's getting on that boat. I just love that Mikasa's like, holy shit, you like Armin? What? Girl, what? Love it. She's like, well, Armin's coming with us, so you could fight with us together and be with him. I honestly think, though, at this point, it's probably good that they were separated because, you know, Armin and Annie have realized they like each other, and that could be a liability if Armin gets distracted and worries about Annie in that moment, or Annie gets distracted and worries about Armin. I do worry about that going into the final part, because I think Annie's going to show up. Oh, the gang's all going to be together at the end, I feel. Whoever makes it out is the question. But I feel like Armin and Annie are going to get reunited. My fear is that they know that they like each other, so if anything happens, that if they get distracted, the other one might die. I don't put it past Annie to die by the end of this. It's gonna suck because Armin likes her, but I don't put it past that she's gonna die by the end of this. Maybe she realizes her dad's alive. That'll motivate her to keep fighting. I don't know. But at this point, she's not motivated at all. And so then there's Levi. And Levi's like, damn it, you whippersnappers. I'm going to go down there and face Zeke. Do you not understand? Again, I worry about Levi a lot. And whether he's going to die or not. The look they all give Levi when he's trying to hold the sword and he only has 2 fingers. And he's like, this will work. I was like, oh, will it? Oh, no. Because they all look at him like, this is not good, Captain Levi, for you to go down and do this. But I like that. One thing I do like is that Levi at no point, he does not blame Eren or seem to get mad at Eren. He doesn't seem surprised by Eren or whatever Eren's decided. Levi's just like, well, because I think that what's important with Levi and Eren's characterization with one another is that Levi's like, you choose what you believe is right and have no regrets. I really want Levi to ask Eren by the end of this, do you have regrets? Like, I want him to ask, like, is this stuff that you regret? Because here's the thing. I think Eren regrets a lot of things. He just doesn't think he has any other options, but I think he's full of regrets. And so I think Levi's going to be like, really? You're doing all this? Shouldn't you be? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to go that route. I think it's going to go one of 2 ways, which seem like such obvious. Either Levi's going to live or he's going to die. I think Isayama could go either way with Levi. If he kills Levi, how would he go out like Hanji? But part of me thinks Levi's going to live to see the end of all this. One, because Hanji gets the big going out moment. Hanji has the big moment like Erwin. And Levi, when he's like, you're starting to sound like Erwin. You're starting to sound like Erwin. And then Hanji sounds like Erwin and then dies like Erwin. Goes out in a blaze of glory. Literally. Part of me thinks that because Hanji had to die this big, massive, heroic death, that Levi's not going to die the same way because that would be repetitive. And the other thing is, I feel like Levi's going to live because he's an Ackerman and he's going to be the one to make it to the end and survive no matter what, which would be kind of emblematic because Levi is a representation of, Levi is the antithesis of Zeke's philosophy. Zeke's philosophy that Eldians don't deserve to live, they don't have the right for life, they should just die off. Levi is the antithesis of that because Levi has fought for his life this entire series and he's influenced so many people that it's like, no, every life has value. And Levi is the epitome of that. And I feel like it would be poetic justice for Levi despite everything he's gone through. And the thing of it is, Levi's gone through shit. He's been like blown up. He's watched all of his friends die. He's seen his family die. But throughout all of that, throughout everything he's been through, Levi has never once, he's never once taken revenge on a group of people. He's never once been like, oh, well, woe is me. He's never been like, I guess, he's never been nihilistic. Levi's always had this major heart and compassion for the people around him. Despite everything that's happened to him, he's been this steadfast, constant force. He's like an antithesis to Eren, honestly. And I wondered when I started watching this series, I had many thoughts about Levi and Eren, which I'll save for the final recap and review. And after I see this whole thing, I had many thoughts about Eren and Levi going into this series because they were the only 2 characters I knew about in Attack on Titan going into this. But this series has defied all expectations of them. But Levi really is an antithesis to Eren. He's like Eren seeking revenge after the death of his mom. Did Levi seek revenge after the death of Kenny and his own family? No. Did he try to kill Kenny because if he found out about the connection with Kutchel? No. The whole idea of the only time he ever sought revenge was honestly off screen in a somewhat canon pseudo story of No Regrets, where he tried to get revenge on Erwin, and then he ended up becoming friends with him, very much like Uri and Kenny, but in all the scenarios where Eren has taken a bad turn in life and transformed it into negativity or seeking of revenge and isolating himself further and further and further, instead Levi has found himself among more and more people in more and more populous situations, and his compassion has almost grown, whereas Eren's has diminished. So it's this really cool dynamic between the 2 of them and how they've gone opposite ways, right? And Eren is like stuck in this wormy founding Titan body withering away, and Levi is fighting to stay alive and being like, you're not leaving me behind. I'm going, bitches. And Armin's like, are you sure, old man? That moment where they're coming down the stairs, Armin looks like the grandma leading the grandpa away. Okay. So they talk about Fort Salva. Yep, if they want to mount an attack on Parody, if the Global Alliance were doing it, then they'll assemble at Karifa Naval Fort first. And after the attack on Liberia, we'll leave them a month. So I like that they're like mapping this out, and Yelena was showing Eren everything. And then you have Flock in the background, right? So that's why Flock knew where they were going, right? Once the Alliance fleet has assembled, we can contact Zeke and use the founder to start a limited rumbling. And Falco and Flock kind of looks away at that moment, being like, you can tell Flock doesn't really want to do the rumbling, which is so sad, but he goes along with it because he thinks that's the only way. It's like a little mini version of Eren. And it's like, it should only take a few hundred titans to crush the outer wall. And then Eren asks, will that be enough? A limited attack? Would that really keep them away from Parody for a couple of decades? And Yelena's like, yeah, well, if it loses its fleet, it's going to be driven to economic collapse, and all the major nations should be more than a sufficient blow. And Eren looks at her like he doesn't trust her at all. No. And so it kind of makes sense that Eren doesn't think it's going to be enough. Eren, again, takes the most negative situation, the most negative outcome, and rolls with it. You know? And there's a part that you can understand why Eren believes that. Like, yeah, as we've seen, when people are desperate, they sometimes come up with means that you wouldn't expect, like Reiner going into Parody and attacking early and all that. So you can't blame Eren for what he's thinking and why he thinks it, but it's just so sad that he immediately goes to the most negative viewpoint possible, right? It says, if I had to pick another target, it would be the fortress in Marley's southern mountains. The airship research base is of some concern. And so then, yeah, Eren, that's why he's going there next to Fort Salva to like start that. Yep. And then I love that Levi's like, wow, you're really talkative all of a sudden. Good for Salta or Salva or whatever it is. Yep. If there's a way to counter them. And he's like, wow, you started talking quick. And then I like that all Yelena wants is for them to admit that Zeke was right, which I don't think Zeke was right. Again, I think that's running away from the problem. But I think that Hanji says that really the problem is I should have, what does Hanji say there? Hanji says, I admit it. I failed to show Eren any other path forward or hope for the future. Which is so sad, because it's like, it should not be Hanji's responsibility to show Eren these pathways. It shouldn't be their responsibility. Shouldn't be, right? Should not be. But anyway, I think by this point, and they decide they're going to lock Falco and Gabby up in the cabin so they can escape, which Gabby can't transform or do anything, so that's understandable. I feel bad. I understand why they want to involve Falco. He's a kid. Keep the kids out of the forest. Strategically, you'd want the Jaw Titan, but keep the kids out of the forest. I'm glad they do that. Narratively, thematically, that makes the most sense. So thanks, show, for showing that that's a possibility. And then, poor Levi. We start double checking your gear, and Levi's sitting there struggling like to wrap his arm around the trigger, and everybody just, the way they look at him is just like, they look at him like a war veteran, like, dude, can you do this? And he's like, oh yeah, 2 fingers, all I need. Damn it, Levi. He's like, no sweat. And everybody's like, oh my God. I do like the moment where Annie is talking to Reiner and Peak. And I love the concept that Peak's like, no, you have no obligation. You didn't want to do this from the start. Like, Peak's like, I'm only doing this because I want to do Magath right. And I don't really have any other thing to do, but I won't be. I like that Peak establishes the idea of no regrets. Peak's like, to you, Annie, this is your path of no regrets. Do it. Peak's like, I will have regrets if I don't try to uphold what Magath laid down. So I'm going to do this. Okay. And then that hug between Annie and Reiner, where Reiner's like, he finally comes clean and tells Annie everything. And Annie's like, yeah, I wanted to kill you a lot. I'm not going to lie. You did some really stupid stuff. And I was mad at you. And then I like Reiner said, thanks for showing restraint. That was the funniest line of this whole episode, was Reiner being like, thanks for not killing me. Again, though! Again! You compare to Eren. Eren's just like, well, I'm going to kill you all because you all made me mad. You all made me mad and I hate you all, so I'm going to destroy you. And Annie's like, yeah, I hated you a really lot, but I didn't kill you. And Reiner's like, thanks for not being like Eren. Oh my God, funniest line of the whole damn episode. And that's saying something. And then her little smile. And she gives him a hug. And then it dawns on you just how big Reiner's gotten. Like, he's a big, bulky man, like a big old teddy bear. And Annie's just giving him a hug there. He's like, take care of Gabby and Falco. And she says, I will. Platonic friend hug, right? I love that Reiner's like, just watch over them. And of course, she's going to lead them right to them. Which is what we're going to end with, I'm sure. And then her, like, when they're all waving. I like that Levi doesn't wave. And he's like, and Mikasa has this little smile on her face, which is like, sure. And then I like Hanji and Connie are very, very optimistic. They're like, see you soon. Sure. And then Armin. The way that Armin does the little wave is like Eren. It's a very Eren gesture of just like the sup. Like, it's a very restrained and gets her like being like, ugh. Mm-hmm. And then Mikasa's like, are you okay with this? Like, I know you like her. And Armin's like, what are you talking about? Why does everybody know? And meanwhile, Connie and Jean do not get that Armin and Annie are liking each other. Jean, you say you wish you'd change your mind, but I think you're going to eat those words like a damn horse. And so then Peek is like, you know, you were right. The funny thing is, here's the thing. I love when Hanji, I take it back. The funniest line is when Hanji's like, let me ride on the back of the cart Titan and feel its warmth. And she's like, no, creeper, no. It wasn't an invitation to get creepy. And Hanji's like, but I just no. And then Levi's saying your hard on for Titans hasn't subsided. Hanji gets to live out their ultimate fantasy in this. I'm so sad Hanji died, but also Hanji getting to live out their ultimate fantasy of dying in the embrace of thousands of Titans. Could Hanji have gone out any other way? I don't think so. Mm-mm. And then Hanji's like, just you wait, I'll win her over. I'm like, I've noticed something. I'm a little bit worried for Jean. I take it back. Jean should not develop a crush on Peek, because everybody that has a crush on Peek or has been around Peek too long has died. Have you all noticed that? First it was Galliard, and I was like, oh, Porco and Peek have a relationship. He died. Then it was Magath being around Peek the whole time, and they were not romantic in any way, but I was like, nope, now he did. And now Hanji was crushing on Peek, and now Hanji's dead. No, Peek is a walking death flag. Do not get near her. Do not develop a crush on her. You will die. So King Jean, I need you to not develop a crush on Peek, because then you may die. Please no. I worry so hard about that. I honestly do. And they're all sitting there. I like that we do get this little tiny scene of them eating up food before they go. Like eating the cans of food because they don't know when the next time they're going to eat is. That is like the tiniest little detail, subtlest little thing. But it is very, very important to establish that, yeah, no, we were thinking about that. And Reiner's just drinking all the water. He's hydrating is important. And Hanji says, do you think they're watching us? Now, here's the thing. This is not the first time Hanji's brought this up. Hanji's brought this up to Jean and Mikasa, if they're watching. Hanji's brought this up to them as well, so it's not like it came out of left field. But Levi, it's the first they're hearing of it, and he's like, oh, no, that our dead comrades are proud of us. And Levi at that moment is like, do not start talking like him. That was a sign of the end. As soon as that line got uttered, as soon as Levi was like, don't start talking like Erwin, I was like, Hanji is gonna die. Because that's Levi's lot in life, right? Right? Mm-mm. And I'm like, as soon as it happened, it was like, nope, it's gonna happen. Imagine that. Grab my toy for hot. I know, right? And then I feel bad for Levi in that regard, because everybody that starts talking about that ends up happening. I can't believe that Flock was freaking alive, and he just comes out of nowhere in true Isayama fashion. When he started walking up out of the hangar, I thought that it was like Falco or somebody had gotten off the boat and they were gonna like join them. I thought that was the case. No, in pure Isayama like WTF fashion, he shows up and starts shooting at them in the ship, and then it's Mikasa that ends up killing him. Mikasa ends up firing the shot and is like, nope, and ends up killing him in that moment. Damn. Seems almost poetic that it was Mikasa. And then, yeah, they're all like, well, shit, he made the Burger King himself made it. How about that? This is really sad to say, and this may come off, may he rest, but this is the best Phlox Hairs looked. All he had to do was put some, like, I guess water on it. That was the solution. And so then they're like, well, we have... Anyan freaks out. I do appreciate Isayama giving us a realistic reaction from Anyan, because Anyan's like, shit, we're screwed. And then the one guy's been shot in the shoulder, the engineer's like, we just have to weld it. It'll be okay. Like, but that's such a realistic reaction, was that as soon as something bad happens, you're like, oh no, we're screwed. And they're like, no, we can fix this. We just need a little bit of time. Like 30 minutes, we're great. We just need to plug the holes. We're fine. And then we have Hanji and Jean hear the final words of Flock as Reiner notices that the rumbling's coming. I like that Jean, he's like, everyone we know will be killed. Only our demon gives us hope. And that's such a phrase, only our demon gives us hope. That, like, to the end, Flock believed that only by submitting to that inner demon inside of you, that inner darkness, can you be hopeful of the future. Like, that's the mentality he has, which is kind of the mentality that Eren has, right? And Hanji just being like, okay. And then that's him dying in that moment. And then Hanji's had to tell a lot of people that others have died throughout this whole course of the series. They've had to tell that Levi, that Erwin died. And yes, you're right, Flock. Oof, but we can't give up. I love that phrase, but we can't give up. It's like, I like that Hanji says in that moment, yes, it may be that we're all going to die. It may be that the inner demon in us is the only way sometimes that we think is the only way out, but we can't give up hope. It's like, you're right. You're not wrong, but also not going to submit to that. I think at that moment, Hanji's like, it may not be today, but we'll get our chance. And that's the thing of Niccolo. Like, you may not succeed today, but you just keep trying. Eventually, it will come around, right? Eventually, it will work. And I think at that moment, I was like, well, Hanji's probably going to die. And then Annie's like, nope, all we can think of. And at this point, I was like, at this point, I thought, does Eren realize that his friends could potentially be killed in this moment? And what do we do with that? And we'll talk about the paths and everything up until then. But it's like, did Eren realize that he was about to kill all the people that he was supposedly supposed to be protecting? And at that moment, Hanji's like, I'm going to be the one to I got you here. I'm going to be the one. I killed my own people to do it. I'm going to stick around and defend till the end. It's my responsibility. And that's when Hanji puts Armin in charge. Armin Arlert, you're the 15th commander of the Survey Corps. And saying the quality most valuable to a commander is an unyielding desire to understand the world. That's it. That's it. You know, when you dedicate your heart, that's the idea. And that's what kind of made the Jaegerists such a, like, toxic, twisted form of that, because they had taken that devote your hearts. They'd taken that symbol and had completely warped it out of its original purpose. The original purpose of the Survey Corps was to understand the world. And to understand it, you have to communicate. And to communicate, you have to stop and talk. And that's what Hanji's been like, Erwin's mission, my mission, the mission of understanding. Like when Hanji had, you know, Sonny and Bean captured, they didn't torture them and kill them. They just had them there to try to communicate and try to understand. It didn't work, but that didn't, you know, that not working didn't stop Hanji from keeping to try to do that over and over again, despite how many times they may have failed. And the thing about it is, the moments where Hanji kind of relaxed in that approach and did give into the violence, like with Sonus and stuff, is when things started to go awry. So it kind of, you know, I love that Hanji brings up that idea that the Survey Corps is all about understanding the world, and you embody that. You are embodying dedicating your heart to understanding, whereas others would throw that opportunity away and give in to the violence, give in to the darkness. You keep wanting to be this beacon of light that's going to break the other side of the wall. It's such a beautiful moment. And for Armin to go from being someone that didn't think they were worth anything to having this role placed upon them. And Hanji's like, okay, that's it, bye. I'm going to leave while I'm looking cool. And they're like, this means Levi's your subordinate, so put him through the ringer. I love it. I love that Hanji's just like, the way Hanji goes out, where they're like, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory and be the coolest person alive. I love how it's different than Erwin. Erwin went out feeling this sense of desperation and this sense that they weren't going to get their dream and everything. And there was such a sorrow to Erwin's death. In Hanji, it's almost like a celebration. It's like Hanji went out doing everything they could. Kind of like, you know, when Armin was sort of a mixture of both. Armin, when they went out in Hero, Armin went out in a blaze of glory like Hanji, but they also went out being like, this is the only way, I'm not going to get my dream. So Armin's like a little combination of Hanji and Erwin in this sense. So that's so interesting, right? So fascinating. But yeah, they get that little note there. And then Hanji walks away from them, the 5 of them. And they all just are standing there like, really? And then as the Titans are coming, and Levi just looking at them. Be like, I know you get it, Levi. The feeling is burning inside of me. It's my turn. And Hanji's like, I want to look as cool as possible right now. So let me keep walking. Don't make me regret this. Let me have this. And Levi, that moment. His eyes almost look like Eren's. And then when he says, dedicate your heart. Like the first time Levi says that. Just gets me. I think that's the first time you've said that. Oh, God, it's so good. And then Levi's like, all right, let's go. You're commander now. Let's go. God, that moment of Hanji just, Titans are amazing. And it's that idea, that wonder in the unknown. And that, what I love so much about Hanji, I'm going to get emotional again because I'm so sad Hanji's gone. Even though when you thought it was coming, it's just the idea that Hanji, their last line is about being Titans are amazing. And it's just that notion that Hanji had from the start is, I'm going to cry again, y'all. That like message that Hanji had from the start of that something that seems so terrifying and non-understandable can be understood if you just take the time to get to know it. And something that seems so cruel and awful, the way that Hanji looked at it as being amazing and being something brilliant and beautiful. It's like Hanji was the embodiment of that message. And they died like living that out. Oh my God. It hurts so much. It does. You're like, damn it. And they're all like just watching Hanji go. And Hanji's like, I'm doing this to get you all out of there. I love the fact that when they all started falling down, it was like a domino effect and it did stall them a little bit. But then like the Titans were just like stomping through each other. Oh my God. Just like, Flock really did screw them over. They could have gotten out there a lot faster. But even as Hanji is burning alive, they still were fighting. Damn. And then, yeah, Armin and them seeing Hanji go down. And then, yeah, Flock gets buried with the rest of it. Damn. As it just destroys the base. As they get let off. Yep. And then, at that point they died. And then, yeah, like Armin and them crying like Reiner's just sitting there with Peak. But yeah, because it's Hanji. Hanji's always been there. And Levi just, even Anyan cries and Levi just sits there by themselves. He doesn't even cry. He's just like, no. Because I mean, at that point, Levi's like, I knew you were going to die, but I hope you're watching us. And the thing about it is that when Hanji wakes up, all of them are there. That's what got me, was Erwin and Moblit and Mike. All of them being there. And you can see Keith. You can see Sasha with their backs turned. You can see all of them there. Like, you did your duty. And Hanji's like, oh, Erwin. Everyone. And sees them flying overhead. Yeah, sees them off. And Hanji knows that they made it, right? Oh my god, and everybody from season 1 is there. And Hanji's like, okay, I see. They made it. Being commander was pretty rough. I like that. Hanji's like, man, it was a hard time. And then they're all just standing there. I like that you can't see, like, everybody's looking towards them except Sasha and Keith. They're not looking. Did you see what that idiot Eren did? Like, they're just like, what a baka. What an idiot, right? Can you believe what he did? What a dummy. Come tell us the story. And the thing of it is, they're not in the paths. Like, none of them are. They're not. That's the one thing that I was like, oh, they're not in the paths anymore. Like, when they die, you think that when they die, they become part of the tree. But no, here, they're not in the paths anymore. They're gone. So I'm curious to know, based on that, if their spirit being free in that sense, if I don't know if it's them dying as Titans that's the case, because Ymir didn't die as a Titan. She died as a human. So I don't know. Here's the big question, and we'll talk about this with the free will. Like has Eren stopped the cycle? Is he slowly, as the Eldians are dying, is the tree going to get smaller because he's no longer letting the cycle of the Eldians continue? We're going to talk about that in the freedom thing and all that here in a second, with them trying to communicate with Eren. But yeah, but that's the thing. The thing about it is, in this sense, when Hanji's with Erwin and them after they've died, I don't think Eren can hear that, right? Eren can hear everybody talking in public, which is the creepiest thing in the world. By the way, super stalker creepy that Eren can hear you all talk. That's creepy. Nope, not having that at all. Also, that brings up a host of things we're going to talk about in a second, but just the idea that Erwin and them are no longer in the paths. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on? Chapter 2, Sinners. Yeah. So they're on the plane trying to figure out what to do. They don't have a lot of fuel left. Anyan feels like they're going to make it to the end, but that's about it. And they're like, well, what do we do? Hanji gave her life for us to have the flying boat, and it's our last hope. And Anyan's like, I'm going to fly it to that base. I like Anyan's like, no matter what, I'm going to get us there. Let's go. And so he's like, do whatever you have to do to stop the rumbling. So let's talk about this. Talk about Sinners, the start of this episode. And I like that Armin kind of like takes, when Armin says, I'm counting on you, like when he turns around, he very much looks like the commander of the Survey Corps. I'm like, good on you, Armin. Good on you. Love it to pieces. And says, okay, we need to talk strategy. Here's my thing. So they talk about, is this what the founding Titan looked like? It's a nice little drawing. And so I didn't get a great look at it, but that's what it looks like. And then I like that Levi's like, it's a walking bone heap. I love that Levi takes every opportunity to make fun of Eren that he can in this moment. It's shaped like a worm. The real body normally would be in the nape of the neck, but worms don't really have bones. It's weird. It's a bone worm, but worms don't really have bones. So can we really rely on it? The fact that but if you can do what the Warhammer can do, then we can't bet on that. Eren could be like underground under the Titan at this moment. Could be like in the ground underneath it. So you can't really trust that you're just going to get it based on that. And Armin's like, so we don't know where Eren is. Imagine that. But we don't know where he is to destroy the entire body. So, like when you wiped out the port, I mean, if you just destroyed the whole thing, that should expose something. And Armin does not want to become the Colossus Titan. I've always loved the motif that Armin does not want to. Armin has like one of the biggest powers in the whole series. And I know a lot of people give Armin hell. They're like, why doesn't Armin just become the Colossus Titan and just destroy things? Because that would be the entire antithesis of his character, obviously. So I like that Armin's like, I don't want to have to find Eren by destroying everything like before. He's like, I'm not like Eren. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to resort to that. And Armin's like, that would be the most efficient method. Eren's doing the most efficient method, but that's not what I want to do. I want to talk to him before I can consider that. No, I want to be able to communicate with him before that's a possibility. It's a last resort. And so Levi says, well, it's nice to have that option as a last resort. However, Eren, doesn't he need Zeke to control the Founding Titan? So won't the rumbling stop if we only kill Zeke? And they're like, yeah, that could work too. If we don't want to kill Eren, let's just get rid of Zeke, and then Eren can't use the Founder anymore. That'll solve the problem, won't it? There's no solid evidence, but that's what Hanji thought. No, Hanji's correct, I'm pretty sure. And they're like, well, we don't know where Zeke is either. We just have to look. His ugly beast ass is hitching a ride somewhere on those bones. Yeah, I love that Levi is sparing no expense. Just make the Yeager brothers, just read them to filth, drag them through the mud. And he's right. Zeke is there. So anyway, that is when they go, and he's about to say something else. And that's when he says, I'll be the one to kill Zeke. Again, Levi is bound to that promise that he made to Erwin. He's a slave to it, but he also wants to do it. So it's interesting. Now here's the thing. Yeah. I mean, we could say that Levi is a slave to that promise to Erwin, and that he's like, I need to fulfill this promise to kill Zeke and do what I told Erwin I would say I would do. So there's that. But also Levi's like, I want to be the one to do it to not put you all in danger. So you guys are all fine. Again, it's like a little micro, it is kind of a micro thing of what Eren said. Like, I'm going to do all these bad things so you all don't have to. But then he says, if you all will help me do it. That's the thing. He's like, I want to be the one to kill Zeke because I said that was my promise. However, Levi takes a huge step here in saying, I've been doing it all by myself this whole time. It's not been successful. So I need you all to help me, and then maybe we can get it done. I think Levi is pretty understanding of the position that he's in. So he's like, you guys we're all going to the same place anyway. We're all going to try to talk to Eren anyway. If we can get rid of Zeke, then at that point, we can probably talk to Eren because he won't be able to do the rumbling anymore. And we don't necessarily have to kill Eren, but we can still talk to him. And at this point, you might be saying, well, that's, they're killing Zeke. But at this point, I'm like, Zeke wants to die. He's wanted to die this whole time. But, I don't know. Anyway. And they're like, okay. And then at that point, he's like, of course we will. Jean says, of course we're going to help him. We had to kill our own comrades just to get the boat airborne. And Connie's like, and he's like, I'm not going to let their deaths be in vain. And then Connie talks about how, like, yeah, we've had to do all these horrible things. Like, they all kind of bear their sins again of what they've done. And I like that Reiner, of all people, he's like, even if I end up saving what's left of humanity, I can't forgive myself. And Reiner's like, he puts the hand on his shoulder and he's like, I have survivor's guilt too. Like, I know what this feels like as well, right? So you have this kind of duality in this moment of, if we save humanity, if we save humanity, we're still going to feel guilt towards ourselves. And then you have on the other end where Eren's like, if I destroy the world, then I'm still going to feel guilt towards myself. So it's like based on the sins that they've committed. So it's like, well, which would you rather have? It's like, which apples and oranges do you want to choose? I probably want to save people. I'd feel maybe a little bit better, and feel like I'd atoned a little bit. And that's when Reiner tells him he can relate to him. And Armin's like, what? And he's like, you're right, Reiner. And he's like, if we can't atone, then we just have to move forward. Which, again, is Eren's logic, right? It's so just that same logic keeps going. It's just, are you destroying the world with that logic, or are you saving the world with that logic? It's that option. I just Connie and Reiner like holding each other's hand in this moment, like about to cry as they look at each other, and then both acknowledging the sins they've committed and how, yeah, it sucks. We both have survivor's guilt, but we got to keep moving forward, right? We got to support each other, right? I was thinking back to season 2 when Reiner and Connie were saving one another. Again, Eren wasn't there. And then just like the bond they developed there and how it's like amplified in this moment. Oh my God. Yeah. And so then them all just sitting there and Jean thinking about, okay, and Jean's relation in all of this. And with that, he's like, we're the same, Reiner. He's like, you're not alone. And that's when he's like, we've never had the right to judge you. I killed people to save people. It's like all of them are admitting that we've all wanted judgment, but none of us deserve to be judged by each other, right? I mean, at this point, we've all committed sins, so we all are, wrong of the same thing. And that's when he goes back and he's like, what does he say there? I feel like I get what Eren is thinking and that he wants us to stop him. I'm like, well, he could make it a little damn easier if he wanted you to really stop them. I feel like that is the one thing I get a little irked about, is that if Eren really wants them to stop him, we're going to talk about that because it seems like there's some stuff there. It's more complicated than that, right? Because they're all like, what do you mean he wants us to stop him? And Mika says, like, what are you talking about? And he's like, it's just a feeling Reiner has. Just a feeling. He's not been wrong before. And Armin's like, that has been bothering me the whole time. Is that Eren has control over all Titans and all Eldians. So why do we still have the power of our Titans? Why hasn't he taken that away? And Peek's like, yeah, do you think he's letting us keep our free will? Well, yes, of course. Clearly. He's giving us our freedom. But like, it's like he wants to see what we're going to do. Well, that's nice. He wants to have a social experiment, but goody for him. Why? We could stop the rumbling. Exactly. Why would you do that? And Reiner's like, well, it's probably not easy for him either. Well, no, but yeah. He says it does bad things to your mind. Mm-hmm. And I mean, yes, there is that to take in consideration. Like if you've killed people, it does do something to you and it messes the way that you think about things. But all of them had killed people at this point. But Reiner's like, he's killed a lot. So it's probably made him believe that he's beyond saving and is in the same boat that Reiner was in when he wanted to kill himself. And he's like, if I were him, I'd be trying to pass the founding Titan powers on to someone else. Which Eren did try to do. He tried to get Historia to do it. That didn't work out, right? And failing that, I would just want it all to end. Which is, that's the story. That's it. But, like, yeah. He's like, at someone's hands. I just want it all to end by someone else's hands. So it's like Eren wants them to kill him. Okay, Reiner is saying that Eren, he wanted to die when he learned the truth. And so when that didn't work, then he just said, screw it. Let's destroy the world. I'm going to destroy the world. Make my friends hate me. And then to like make them feel like put all the blame on me. Put all the blame on Eren. And then they'll kill me. And I can atone. And then I can atone, I'll be dead, and they can live a happy ever after. Without me, because I'm a monster and I don't deserve to live. I get it. It's dumb. I'm like, I hate it. I'm like, what? Stop. I just want to like smack him. You're like, that's dumb. Right? And the thing about it is, it's a very warped take on a trope that is very prevalent in trope in anime and manga. We've seen it several times before where there's like, I'll use case study of Vanitas for an example. Case study of Vanitas. There are two main characters, and one of the main characters has done something awful. They've killed someone that was near and dear to them, and they feel guilty about it. They feel survivor's guilt for a number of reasons. blah, blah, blah. And so, but in that story, the main character is trying to do good and save a group of people from the things that are going to happen to them. And then when they're called out and they're like, well, what if you die? What if you deserve to die? They're like, well, then I want to die at the hands of the people I care about because I want them to be the one taking me out. Makes sense. Then you have characters in another series that go through the exact same thing where they're like, well, if I have to die, I want the person that I love to be the one to do it. If I get to that point where I become a monster, you all take me out. Right? Okay. But it's always been such a, in other stories that I've seen this trope, it's been on such a small scale in comparison to this. It's been on a scale of, oh no, they became a villain. You guys gotta take me out now. And that's exactly what's happening here. But the thing that's so frustrating about this, where Eren was like, he wanted to die after knowing the truth, didn't happen, so he was like, well, screw it, I'm gonna destroy the world. And then he took all these extra avenues to make Mikasa and Armin dislike him because he's like, I want you guys to kill me so then you guys will probably feel like, you know, it was my fault and blame me. But it's like Eren is completely neglecting the idea that they still love him. Eren cannot realize that they will love him despite everything that he does. And it's like, it's so frustrating as a viewer. And that's when they get shut into the paths by little kid Eren, by the child form of him. And they're like, oh shit, we're all here. What is this? Oh, John says this again. And John's like, I hate this. And Levi's like, seriously? Someone was peeping in on us, huh? That's the thing too. I'm very frustrated. Now if Eren just randomly scouted around to try to see where they were and saw they were in the vicinity, if Eren sensed that they were near and he was like, oh, what's happening? What are you guys up to? That's one thing. But if Eren's been able to listen to them this entire time and knew what they were thinking about him this entire time, come on. That does not improve my view of him at all. Because Levi's like, seriously. And that's when Armin's like, listen. And the thing that makes me so mad is that Armin and them, they are like, look, you did bad things. See? He's like, you don't need to kill anybody else, right? The island will survive. It'll be okay. And Armin's like, what do you want to hear, Eren? And then he's like, it's our fault. And that part made me a bit mad because them being like, it's our fault that you're doing this. I'm like, no, it's not. It really isn't. It's like, this is very much Eren. It almost seems like they're trying to like say, oh, Eren, you went off the deep end because of us. And I'm like, Eren's a freaking adult. He should be able to realize, no, he's made this decision himself. And I'm like, it's very frustrating because I'm like, I want Eren to tell them it's not your fault. I made this decision. I've always been this way. I was going to do this from the start. So it's not your fault. I wanted him to tell them that in this moment, to say, no, it's not your fault. I've always been this way. I knew I was going to do this from the start. You are not to blame for this. But he doesn't do that. And that frustrates me because I'm like, it's almost like they're trying to like, it's like a Stockholm syndrome thing, sort of, where they're just like, oh no, it's not you. It's us. No, it's him. Like that made me mad. I was like, no, we're the ones who drove you to do this. And it's like, well, and John's like, Eren, he's like, we can take care of things. I got so frustrated at this moment because I'm like, they're trying to like, it's almost not that they're gaslit into this point, but they're just trying to like be like, no, Eren, it's not you. It's us that's the problem. Like, no, it's Eren. It's Eren. I'm like, Eren, do not let them try to take the blame from you. That made me mad. I was like, no, Eren chose this. He very much did. And John's like, you don't need to kill anybody else for us. And Connie's like, yeah, stop it. He's like, I hated you after what happened to Sasha, but you were sad about it too, weren't you? Now, I'm glad Connie said this, because yeah, Eren was sad. He's like, I didn't try to see things from your point of view. But I'm like, still, it makes it feel like it's such a Stockholm syndrome thing. It's like, it almost feels like Eren's the abuser, and the victims are like, no, it's not your fault. We just weren't seeing things from your perspective. Oh no. When... yeah. And that's what it feels like. And I know that, and the thing about it is, Eren never once tried to communicate with them for them to see from his perspective. That's what pissed me off too. Because I'm like, it would be one thing if Eren had tried to talk to them and had been fully transparent and been like, hey guys, here's all the things going on with me. Here's how I feel inside. I don't know what to do about it. And everybody was like, but Eren, you're going to help us anyway, and blew him off. That would have been one thing. And that would have made this scene be justified and being like, yeah, it would have been like, yeah, you guys should have listened to Eren this whole time. But the thing about it is, if you don't communicate and you don't talk to people, then no, they're not going to see the red flags. If you're passing it all out as if everything's okay, that's fine. And yes, during Dawn of Humanity, one of the things that Armin and Mikasa say is that they did see some red flags and they didn't act upon it, and they should have. Yes, that would, in that sense, if that's what they're talking about, it does make it, partially they are partially responsible. However, I don't like the idea of saying Eren is not to blame for anything. I hate that mentality. I'm like, no. There are some people who have commented and been like, Eren, it's not Eren's fault at all. It's everyone else's fault. I'm like, no, Eren is very much equally parts responsible for this. And for people to try to take the blame away from Eren is wrong. I'm like, nope, disagree hardcore. But yeah, and Connie's like, we never try to see it from your point of view. Like, they try everything to negotiate with him and to, like, try. And they're like, come on, say something. And Mikasa says, I want to shoulder some of your sins. Like, we're all just as guilty as you are. And that part, Mikasa saying, you are guilty, but so are we. So stop keeping yourself so far away from us. That was the best line. Like, everybody tries to skirt around the point, and Mikasa just comes out and says, no, we're all to blame. We are all part of this cycle of violence. We are all to blame for this. But you keep distancing yourself, and that's not good. Come back to us and let us talk this out. Like, Mikasa, I'm so proud of her in this moment. Because she's like, please, come back to us. Like, let's work this out. Like, why are you being so difficult? And Levi's like, you heard them. Like, I'm willing to let you off with a kick to the butt if you just come back and say something. He's like, say something. And everybody's just waiting for Eren to reply. And then Armin says, the rumbling. And that's when he says, the rumbling will not stop. He says, the future of parody will not be left to chance. And everybody's like, what? I'm going to continue forward. And Levi says, look. And that's when we see the kids. Like, the two of them standing there. Like, little kid Eren. Like, inside of him, that little kid. I like that Jean and Connie and Mikasa and Armin run to them. And then it just ends up being a spiral back. And the little kid version of him is terrifying. Right? It's definitely Eren. Yep, it's that kid, like the kid version from back there where they're running towards, it looks like they're running towards a tree. Go figure. Yeah, running towards the tree there. And Mika says, she's like, Eren, why can't you stop? Do you not trust us anymore? Why are you letting us use our titans? If you do trust us, we can talk for as long as we need to here, so talk to me. And that's so frustrating because, yes, Armin just wants to talk to Eren. He's like, we have all the time in the world in this place, and the path's time stops. So he's like, we could sit here and talk for hours. Why won't you sit with us and talk to us and communicate and just do this? Why can't you do that? Like, that's what needs to happen. We've always been together, so stop pulling away from us. And it's like, I'm going to take the world's freedom in order to attain freedom of my own. And there we have it. Because, yeah, Armin, they bring up everything. They're like, we can spend as much time as we need to in the paths talking. Time moves slow here. We could sit here and talk for hours. We could talk for days. We could have our own night at the end 1,000 times over. And work all of this out, and you could communicate with us and tell us everything. Like, we could do all of that. Why won't you do that? And so Eren says that he is going to take the world's freedom. He's going to take the world's freedom to obtain my own freedom. I can't be free as long as the world's free, basically. And he's like, that's how it's going to be. Like, I'm doing this for myself. And so then we see, and then they come back, yeah, and they see, but I have no intention of taking anything from you. I don't want to take my, I love you, so I'm not to take my freedom. You are free. So he tells him that the ones that he spared are free. It's a very fire and brimstone thing, like a god would say, like, oh, I've spared you. You guys are free. I'm going to let you do whatever you want. Yeah. So you are free to protect the world's freedom, which is like the most hollow. And he says you are free to protect the world's freedom. He's like, look, I'm going to take the world's freedom and use it for myself because that's what I've decided to do. And I'm moving forward. I'm not going back. I'm not changing my mind. It's like Eren enters the villain era hard and just goes hardcore about it. He's like, I'm going to do whatever I want and get what I want. And this is what I want. So, and this is like, and at that point you see just how like warped and messed up Eren is, because it's gotten to the point where Eren's like, I'm not doing this to save you. I love you all. So I'm going to let you guys, my gift to you is your freedom. And if you want to save the world and protect it, go right ahead. Kill me. If you care more about them than me, then do it. I'm going to give you this impossible scenario. Now roll with it. You're free to protect the world's freedom. Go ahead. What are you going to do? Kill me? Just as I'm free to continue forward. But what's so messed up about that is that Eren is in the ultimate position of power. So it's like owning the chessboard and being like, yeah, you guys are pieces on here. I guess do whatever you want. But I mean, I can close this chessboard up at any time, but I'm going to be so benevolent and not do that for you. Such a villain move. Such a villain move, right? It's such a villain move because it's like, yeah, he's like, I have all the power. I can destroy you all. I can take away your Titan powers. I could do that. But you know what? I'm not going to do that. I like you all. I want to save you. So you guys do whatever you want. If you want to kill me, try. But I'm going to keep doing what I do. Not going to negotiate. Ah! Yep. And that's it. And he's like, as long as we remain unable to compromise on our convictions, we will clash. And it's like, yes, of course. That's what we've been talking about, right? As long as we are unable to compromise on our convictions, we will clash. Well, we've talked about that story all day long. And then we see the two kids there, Ymir and Eren. Yep. So there's only one thing for us to do. Oh my God. And that's fight. Oh, and they're both slaves to the system now. That's all it's done. And it's like Isayama sending the biggest representation that if you create these impossible scenarios, and if you fall down this path where you believe that there's no way to reach compromise, there's no way to stop the cycle, then all you're going to do is just continue it. And so now it's like, now Eren is just continuing the cycle like Ymir. Ymir's problem was that Ymir could not have her own agency. She would not speak up. She became a slave to someone else and someone else's ideals. And because she became a slave to it, all she could do is keep moving forward and keep doing the same thing over and over again. And now Eren's whole thing is he can't get out of the cycle either. He's been caught up in the cycle of violence and can't escape it. And now he's become like Ymir, where he's a slave trapped in the paths. It's terrifying. It's like, oh, because you think in season 4, part 2, you think, oh, Eren like hugging Ymir is him freeing her and he's going to take her place. But no, he just joins her. He's now shackled to her as well, shackled in the same path. It's like, oh my God. And they're like, oh. And they're like, no way. Then why did you bring us here? Like, why did you bring us there? To tell you there's no need for us to talk. That there's no point in communicating or trying to negotiate because it's not going to change his mind. Ha! And Levi's like, well, that makes sense. If you want to stop me, you'll have to sever my spine. You'll have to kill me. You have the freedom to do that. I hate it. I hate it. I loathe it. Yeah, because it's like, yep. And Reiner's just like, are you freaking kidding? Jean looks like, well, why should we be surprised? He's a suicidal maniac. And then Mikasa, yeah. Eren's basically said, if you want to stop me, you've got to kill me. Sorry. I've decided this. I'm going to do it. It's so twisted, but should we be surprised? Again, I don't want to make too much judgment on Eren as I've talked for 2 hours about him. As I've talked for 2 hours about him, I don't want to, I don't want to say anything, but at this point, it's like Eren, yeah, he's just like, well, Eren's created an impossible scenario. I'm like, Eren, you had all the time in the world to talk with them, to work something out, to create understanding and trust and build something. And you said, nope, not going to do it. You got to kill me now. I've given you no choice. And the sad thing is they still want to talk to him. They still want to try to reach him. They still, despite all of that, want to try to save him. I'm like, y'all are the best friends in the world. Y'all are friends beyond compare, because for you to be told by a genocidal maniac that there's nothing you can do and for you to still try it, kudos to you. I want friends like Mikasa and Armin. That's for damn sure. I want friends like that. And so Jean's like, well, is there anything else we can do? Now that we've established that we don't want to negotiate? And Levi's like, well, negotiations failed, so what now, Commander? And Armin, I love Armin gets mad in that moment. He's like, what an idiot. How dare he? What is this? Armin's like, you know what? We're just going to keep going at it. We're just going to keep trying. Because I'm not going to give up on him. Yep. And so then they're like, where are we headed? We're headed to Kizaru. And I like the idea that Annie asks the Asmobita woman. I like the idea they're talking about eating seagulls and fish. And she's like, would you... She's like, the Asmobita woman says, it was I who allowed Zeke and Eren to meet. I'll never be able to atone for my role as a catalyst for this massacre. And Annie's like, okay, well, does that mean if you could go back that you would stay away from the Eldians and leave Parody Island to its doom? She doesn't say yes. She says there's no point in saying what if. She's like, I can say a lot of things, but, at the time when you make decisions, you don't always, sometimes, if you don't think all the pathways out, literally, then you can't really, she's like, what point is there in me saying sure or no? What point is that in the past? So meanwhile, she's like, my priority coming here was to protect my family and my name. She's like, that was really all I was doing it for, if I'm being honest. Why do we fail to appreciate what we have before it's lost? Yeah, that part felt very kind of cliche. I'm like, oh, you don't know what it's got till it's gone. I'm like, yeah, welcome to this series. Like, one of the main messages of it. Are you kidding? And so she starts to cry, and then Annie's like, well, shit. If we could simply value people without thinking of loss or profit. Again, Isayama, it's all coming down to the most tried and true, simplest of things. That if you all just communicate, if you all just focus on collaborating and coexisting without thinking of profit or without using people or being filled with hatred, then that's the key. That's the key to world peace. There's my Miss America answer right there. But this series has shown like what happens if you let that escalate to the point where it's too hard to come back from it. Like Isayama has a very simple message in this story, but it's just giving you the most frustrating, impossible corners to try to get out of to get back to that, right? And that's when Falco and Gabby show up. And they're like, oh, hey, I had a dream, Annie. And I like Annie's like, really, now of all times? And she's like, a dream? And he's like, part of Galliard's memory? And he's like, no, it was Zeke's dream. I mean, Zeke's memory. The female Titan can use other Titans' abilities by eating part of them, right? I was like, when was this established? That the female Titan can use other Titans' abilities by eating them? When was that? When did that happen? I was like, has that always been a thing? I don't recall. I guess maybe did Annie become able by eating part of Reiner to use the armor? Was that something? Uh-huh. Okay, maybe. So if Annie eats a part of Falco, can Annie become Angelwoman from Digimon? Can she sprout wings and fly too? Is that a possibility? What? a second. And she's like, the female Titan is especially good at that, so they made me swallow all sorts of things. Like what, when is this? They're like, okay, so that's right. So like, we can make this work. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what are you guys talking about? And like, go shovel some coal. And they're like, no, wait, hear us out on this. And she's like, did you say you saw one of Zeke's memories? And he's like, yeah, Zeke's spinal fluid is what turned me into a Titan. So he's inherited some of Zeke's memories as well as Porco's. Okay. And that's why he's manifesting some of the Beast Titan traits. Well, that explains why he looks like a bird. Fair. That makes sense. That all makes sense now. And he's like, okay, well then what do we do with that? And he's like, the memory I saw most clearly was flying above the clouds. It felt like something I could do too. Yes. So there was a previous Beast Titan that was probably a bird, and that's what he's remembering. And he's like, holy shit, you could become a plane. You could become a plane, and if I eat part of you, I can become a plane. Planes for everyone. I want Annie as Angelwomon, please, from Digimon. Can we do this? Even if she can't turn into a bird, which, whatever. If Falco can turn into part Beast Titan and can become a flying Titan because he's got some like wings and stuff, I want this to happen. I want Falco to turn into a bird. I also want him to have like Gabby inside his mouth the whole time, being like helping him steer or whatever. I am a little worried if they bring Gabby along. Although, give her a bazooka and she can probably shoot through Eren. She's done it once before. Why not again? On the one hand, I'd want her to stay with the Asmobito woman, maybe. But if Falco goes to the others, I see Annie going with him. Maybe Gabby too. Maybe they'll leave Gabby with Asmobito woman. That'd probably be smart, but I don't know. Why not? Or maybe they'll take Gabby to her family. Maybe she'll be like, I want to go to my family. Leave the Asmobito woman on the ship. She's got no place in this now. But leave the Asmobito woman on the ship. Take Gabby. Like, have Falco fly up to the others. Drop Gabby off with her family. And then go help the others. And maybe let Annie see her dad again. Let's let that happen. That would be great. Let's do that. And then we have, we see that Annie's dad is alive. Reiner's mom is alive. Gabby's family is alive. There's this guy that looks like maybe he's a Grice. He looks kind of like Armin. He's talking with Peek's father. You know, that's great. I'm glad for that. And then the airships are going to attack Eren. And yeah, I like that I think those little cannons are going to do something. But then we have the Marleyan man, and he has a wife and kids, and he's next to them. We see Colonel Sanders here. Colonel Sanders is the one being like, if we make it out alive, we're not going to make the mistakes of the past. We're going to make it out and coexist. I'm like, glad it took Eren, nearly destroying the world to realize this. I've said this since season 1 that I thought Eren was going to become the antagonist of the series, and here we are. And I thought for a long time that Eren is going to make himself become this villain that they have to destroy to stop. And Eren doesn't believe he's worth living, so he's fine with it. And he's made closure with himself that it could happen. But he's not going to stop trying to live because it's Eren. And so there's that. And that if they end up killing Eren, that's a way they can foster, repentance and stuff for the Eldians. So if it turns out that Eren did not realize that the true peace of this world could come from him being destroyed, and that it was going to take his friends to do it, and if all this stuff, because I've always felt like Eren has tunnel vision and he only sees things in a narrow mindset, and that's his biggest fault, and that the rest of the world comes together to stop him. And I'm going to be fine with the ending if Eren did not realize what was going to happen because of his actions. If Eren becomes this Shakespearean villain that falls, not realizing that it was his actions that saved everybody, and at the end he's like, oh, imagine that. If he didn't know the whole time, I'm going to be like, okay, you're Baka. Fair. But now you get to see. But if he's known this entire time that they were going to have to kill him, and he's known about it, now if it was subconscious and he just got glimpses and couldn't put 2 and 2 together until the very end, fine. But if he's known this entire time and still went through with all this, when he knew he had the power to possibly change things and just didn't, I'm going to have a problem. Also, I don't know how Eren can live at this point. and the story have a sense of justice at the end. The one thing I don't want is for him to erase memories. I don't want him to erase Armin and Mikasa of his memories of them, but at this point I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to be pissed if he erases their memories. I'm going to be really mad. And chuck my coffee cup across the room. Probably not. I like this coffee cup, but I'll chuck something. But I don't know how this is going to end, but it makes it very clear that Eren thinks that he's going to give them the impossible scenario. They have to kill him to stop him, and he doesn't think that that's going to happen. But I'm okay with them realizing it just sucks that it takes something like this for them to all realize the errors of their ways. It's like, are you freaking serious? This is what it took? You couldn't have realized this years ago? The idea of the Beast Titan being used by Eren and it like being this little like umbilical cord connecting to the back of Zeke is terrifying. It's so gross. It's like, ugh. I felt like Zeke was a part of Eren, but now it's like he's really a part of Eren. But yeah, and then you have just the body. Oh my god. And the Beast Titan. All of this. But then, yep, look up there. And again, just like how Falco pointed up to the sky at all of them, we see the airship coming down. And they're all like, make sure you land on top of the Founding Titan because it may not boil you alive there. The Beast Titan being like all white and controlled is so grisly and creepy. And then, well, we found him. Let's go. We're going to stop the rumbling. Oh my god. It's so creepy. It's like the Warhammer has like embedded itself into the Beast Titan. Creepy. Poor Anyan. Like, I want Anyan to live, but I thought he was going to like die. I thought Anyan was going to like die and the plane was going to crash by the end of this episode. It hasn't yet. May still very well do that in the next episode. But I love that Armin jumps out first like, Eren, you bastard. Listen to us, damn it. He's like, we're coming to get you. Mikasa looks a lot like Levi jumping down. A lot like Levi. And then going down towards the bones. Now, where the Beast Titan is connected at, I wanted to see where that was exactly. Mappa just likes drawing Armin, don't they? So the Beast Titan is connected. Where are they connected at? I want to see that for sure. We get the idea. Okay, it's not connected directly at the nape. It's just on the back there right behind it. So there's a chance Zeke's still in there, but who knows? Who knows? And Levi's like, son of a bitch, there he is. And I love that Reiner transforms like, all right, let's go. And the Cart Titan is there. The idea of how it's like all of the, they're like little hands like connected to Zeke and using him like a puppet. I'm like, where's Yelena in all this? Did she live? Is she on the plane? What's she doing? And then Reiner just gets down there. And now Reiner broke off Zeke from Eren. So what ended up happening at that point? Because like they were disconnected. So you would think that, and of course, oh man, Peek has the explosives on her. I don't like where that's headed. I don't like that idea. Also, it's weird to see the Cart Titan without the little cart. It's just like a little naked blob. But yeah, so if Zeke's disconnected, did we do it? Are they no longer able to do the rumbling if Zeke's disconnected? Or does Zeke have to die for that connection to fully be gone? Right? That's the question. And then the Armor Titan, the Cart Titan are there. Okay, and then Reiner's mom knows that's her. And then Armin standing up being like, Eren, I have one more question for you. How exactly are you free? I'll have you answer when we tear you out of there. So yeah. So then them disconnecting the Beast Titan, I'm like, well, what do we do there? Right? What do we do with that? And then we see, I want to go back. I don't want to listen exactly to the Edie until the very end, but it looks like Eren walking towards the tree where the founder is from. So, which makes the sense. Makes sense, right? The one tree there. The one tree to rule them all. You know. So yeah. Welcome to part 1. I talked for nearly 2.5 hours. Oh my god. And that was just within an hour. So yeah, fun times. So I'm sorry if I ranted about Eren, but Eren frustrates me a lot as a character. I don't have much sympathy for him. because he's so tunnel visioned. And I think in comparison to a lot of the other characters in this series who we have seen come full circle, who have been at the lowest of lows in their actions, and they've come back from it, realized and reflected on themselves, made a change, rehabilitated, and are making a difference, and have come back to help others. When you see that in comparison to Eren just doubling down on his own lack of self-worth and doubling down on his nihilism and how much he hates everything around him, including himself, it kind of makes you go, okay. And so, again, amazingly written character. I love what Isayama does with him in making him a villain, but he definitely works in this last part of the story to make you really dislike Eren and go, why are you being this way? And then Armin deserving all the praise for not giving up on Eren and still being like, we're going to drag you out of there and talk to you and smack you in the face like we should have done how long ago? So yeah, sorry about that. I felt the need to vent about Eren, but maybe next week will change my mind. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe it'll take the recap review and RIP, but you know how I be. If people start being like, you're wrong, I'm going to double down, so you might want to hold off on that. But I'm excited to know your comments down below. RIP Hanji. RIP Burger King. RIP millions of people. But I'm excited for next week. It's going to be a fun time. I'm going to plot the whole day out just to prepare for it. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah! I'm back next week with the final part of the anime for Attack on Titan. Bye.